they're like, I had no idea,
Mm-hmm.
um, not only of like some of the slave plantations, but also how the Underground Railroad came through Montgomery County. And so
Right, right.
everyone was like walked away, no riots happened, which I gladly rubbed in the face of some
Mm-hmm.
of those parents at the PTSA meeting, which ironically
Wait, did
was
people actually think that riots were going to happen?
some parents were kind of like thinking that some people were going to be that some of the black kids were going to walk away angry at white people, and I'm like, no, they're going to come away more informed but not
Mm-hmm.
angry. And they were like, what, this is actually peaceful. And I'm like, what'd you expect?
You know what's funny though?
What?
In some ways, information might be viewed as more dangerous than anger.
Yeah, the thing is, and one of the things that I learned, and I found out about this quote later, but Huey Newton, who helped found the Black Panthers, he said every time
Mm-hmm.
a black person rises up to challenge the slave image, he's going to scare white folk. And that
Mm-hmm.
goes back, and that kind of ties into how that knowledge is power, because for the longest,
Mm-hmm.
even now, we see how it is in not just in schools, but throughout
Mm-hmm.
society. It's like every time a black person becomes educated or aware of the
Mm-hmm.
conditions going on, they
They
get
wouldn't let them
to
read.
they won't let exactly. That's why they wouldn't let him read. In fact, the attitude was that the slave is happy and docile, but if you teach him how to read, he's going to be angry. He's going to be upset. He's going to
Ignorance is
start asking
bliss.
questions because reading helps people think. Helps
Mm-hmm.
start people like getting like these ideas. You know what I mean? And that's what I
Yeah.
and I'll never forget. You know, my mom chewing out these same parents. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because not only were they trying to squash myself, which was like, from speaking up and everything. They're
Mm-hmm.
also trying to basically, my mom would let them know, let me remind you, this school is so diverse. There is no majority here, you
Mm-hmm.
know? But the problem is that you think that if you see like a few black or brown kids in your neighborhood, all of a sudden you want to think about hightailing it somewhere else, like Bethesda, or moving out of
Yeah.
county to do so, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And those are a lot of powerful lessons I learned, that
Yeah.
even when I went to high school at Paint Branch, I still would go to PTA meetings, when I could, because at this point, high school, I was playing sports, and sometimes it was like
Right.
I couldn't because I got to go home and study. But when I was able to, I went
Mm-hmm.
to those meetings and was still being involved, and again, still being shocked at the same thing that was going on. And at this point,
Mm-hmm.
to give you the context, Paint Branch was undergoing a transition to the majority black high school that it is now. When I
Okay.
was going there, it was like 48% black. In fact, my
Mm-hmm.
class, the class of 2010, was the first class that was predominantly black at Paint
Mm-hmm.
Branch. And
Yeah.
even at going to the PTA meetings, again, being one of the few black faces there, and being,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, light skinned at that too.
Not proportionately representative.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing, and that's the thing. It taught me a lot about involvement. It also taught me a lot
Mm-hmm.
about light skin privilege, in a sense where,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I'm a black man, I'm
Mm-hmm.
seen as a threat, but at the same time, because I'm a lighter skinned black man, I'm seen as a little bit more acceptable, a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
tolerable to society, even if I'm doing radical things like trying to push for more black history to be taught in
Mm-hmm.
schools, if I'm pushing to get more black folk in STEM programs.
Yeah.
And and then those were pivotal lessons, that I'm forever thankful for. And it kind of started bridging in high school, where I started seeing, I think, the intersectionality between not just
Mm-hmm.
education, but the prison, school to prison pipeline, and
Mm-hmm.
community divestment and investment. Because let me set the context. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because again, my class was supposed to be the first class from Paint Branch to
Mm-hmm.
graduate from the new high school. But they kept on
Right.
pushing it back and pushing it back, because they're talking about, well, we don't have the money. But
Mm-hmm.
at a school meeting that was happening at Paint Branch, I called foul on that, because I said, I travel around the county and I'm seeing a bunch
Mm-hmm.
of new construction going on, new extensions to these school buildings in places
Right.
like
Right.
in Potomac. But I said, but what I find interesting is that we don't have enough money here, but not too far down the road, you guys are building a new police station. So
Mm-hmm.
why is it, your baby was saying, and I didn't know the term school to prison pipeline was around, but at the same
Yeah.
time,
That when I learned that, I was like, "Oh, I've never heard that before," but it makes perfect sense. Like,
yeah. See, that was the same thing. I said, it seems to me that if you are a student and you go to Paint Branch or Springbrook or Northwood or Wheaton, you're pretty much telling us that we're preparing you to go to jail, whereas you can
Especially
go.
Springbrook.
Yeah, oh gosh, I know you remember the rumors about Springbrook,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but if you go, but you're telling us, but if you go to school like Churchill or Walter Johnson or Walt Whitman, we're preparing you for leadership of tomorrow, and that is ridiculous. And it's funny now too, because at the time I got treated as an outcast because of that. But it's funny how many years later some of the same folk who treat me like an outcast were like, yo, man, we should have been listening to you back then, all the craziness that's going on. And I'm just like, hey, welcome to the fight, you know?
It's labeling theory, you know? Like, I mean, if you label someone something enough, eventually they're just going to give into it. I remember when I was still studying social work at Westchester, there was this one, like panel or seminar, whatever you want to call it, of 3 guys who had their murder sentences commuted to parole sentences. And, one of the guy, 2 of the guys like were accessories. One guy was like, he actually did it, but he turned into like an Episcopalian priest. Pretty amazing story. But the other guys, like they one of them talked about this teacher he had in like 1st grade, and he wasn't great at reading, and teacher just basically said that, but he there was like this presentation each kid had to do where like they went up to the class and said what they wanted to be, and most of the kids were doing like the typical little kid things like, I want to be a firefighter, I want to be a police officer, I want to be an astronaut. And he said, I want to be an astronomer. And the teacher looked at him and said, I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something to the effect of, you're too stupid to be an astronomer, you'll never be an astronomer. So and people don't realize, like, people think like, oh, well, I mean, but that really does affect some people, especially if you're told by society that you're less than, and then, because this guy was a black guy, and and then all of a sudden, a teacher just affirms it for you, this authority figure, you're going to carry that with you. So he carried that with him for years, and he went and he made a lot of wrong decisions, and it wasn't until he had been in jail for a while where and started doing some things where he discovered his own intelligence. And he realized, that people had misled him for all his life.
Well, that's the thing, words have power. I know people say that the old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, but words do hurt. Words carry.
I think they hurt more.
Exactly. Like,
I'd rather get punched in the face than, have something horrifically terrible said to me.
Yo, facts, no lies, detecting fact. The same thing happened to Malcolm X, when he was like in 7th grade. His thing was, I wanted to be a lawyer, and his teacher was kind of like, be realistic. I want to keep it clean. But he said, Malcolm, you're black. You know what I mean? A lawyer is not meant for being black people, but you go with your hands. You should be a carpenter. And Malcolm carried that with him, when he was out on the streets and being called Detroit Red. It wasn't until he went to prison and he started reading and studying with the Nation of Islam, he began becoming this very polished orator, highly intellectual, able to break down facts. And at that panel that you went to, it kind of reminded me of a quote that Malcolm once said, where Malcolm said, prison has proven to be a university for many a black man, because I think
I love that.
Black folks, unfortunately,
but white people who's listening to this, don't take that the wrong way.
Exactly.
Oh, you just said more to prison debt. That's the right.
No. I'm not saying that. No. I want to be.
I know.
I'm not advocating more, but the thing,
right.
There's this song that Mos Def and Talib Kweli did as part of the group Black Star. It's like you get knowledge, you get knowledge that's going to jail and getting knowledge of self. But the thing is that at the same time, Malcolm said you shouldn't have to go to jail to get knowledge of self or to pick up knowledge to measure intelligence. The thing is that, like, the way the society is built, it's built to subjugate people. You know what I'm saying? It's built to keep those who are on top, and their children and their children's children, and everyone else is on the bottom. The problem is, though, is that the way certain things are taught is that a lot of people buy these Horatio Alger tales of the whole you're picking yourself up by your bootstraps. But the problem is, a lot of people don't have any. Exactly, and the thing is, because a lot of people don't have any boots to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Some people, their boots are taken away. So how, so if I don't have boots for whatever reason, like, maybe they were taken, or like they were taken, stolen, put in cement, how can I pull myself up? And more importantly is that, like, the problem is too is that like a lot of people view themselves as temporarily embarrassed millionaires instead of being seen as part of a working class struggle. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think a lot. I mean, there's that MLK quote that was, I think, similar to what you said, and and I think that even to add to that, though, a lot of times we're not just asking bootless people to pick themselves up by their bootstraps, but we're asking bootless people to pick themselves up by their bootstraps when they're walking barefoot through broken glass. Like it's just, it's ridiculous.
Exactly, man. That is definitely true right there because you're asking. It's pretty much, it brings up that scenario of a lot of people have like different starting lines and different starting points. It's like
Quality versus equity.
yeah, it's like this a track analogy. I used to run track in high school. So let's say you and I are getting ready to run the 400, and before the race gets started, the referee takes you and puts you like 10 feet away from the finish line. I'm still at the starting line, and not only am I still at the starting line and you're 10 feet from the finish line, the ref decides I'm going to put a ball and chain around my foot.
Yeah,
What chances
that's
do
a
you
great
think are
analogy.
good that I'm going to be able to catch up and beat you if you're already like,
Nope.
you know what I'm saying? The chances are not good. I don't care how fast you are. It's almost, it's high nigh impossible. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's just like that. It's like that whole thing. Like a lot of people, like you said, like broken glass, like different starting points in life. You
yeah.
know.
And so I guess that brings us to kind of what's going on right now, because I mean, I just keep going back to Bacon's Rebellion
Mm-hmm.
and how we haven't learned from that somehow. After what, 400, 500 years, we haven't learned from Bacon's Rebellion. These like, white elites are not the friends of these, less financially fortunate white people, and yet the skin association keeps fooling people over and over and over and over again. Because in that moment, where black people and white people realize, hey, there are more of us than the rich people. Like, they just went up. I'm not saying this is all rich people's fault what's going on right now, but I'm saying, like, the people who are oppressing you, they're fooling you, they're swindling you. It's a scam.
Exactly. And then let me break down Bacon's Rebellion for those who probably may
Yeah,
not
please
be
do.
aware. So Bacon's Rebellion took place in the Virginia colony. And what was unique about that rebellion, because
Pre-US.
in the US, yes. And
Pre-US, like it was before
the
we had been
colonial era.
established.
It was
Yeah.
during the colonial period. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
So during the colonial period, what was unique about Bacon's Rebellion was that you actually had white indentured servants and
Mm-hmm.
formerly and at the time enslaved Africans, actually joining together to rebel. And
Mm-hmm.
so what wound up happening is that the elite at that time, what they did was that they started, we're going to give you poor whites some land, we'll make you
Mm-hmm.
overseers at some of these like nice wealthy plantations.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a result, it's like that old divide and conquer. And every time,
Mm-hmm.
and we've seen this before, like even during Reconstruction, even during the populist era of the 1890s, where again you had poor whites and blacks coming together and saying
Mm-hmm.
Dems and Republicans don't care about you. We're going
Mm-hmm.
to join together and realize we're all part of the same struggle. It was the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. They started taking the poor white and saying, we'll pay you a little more. You can live in some
Mm-hmm.
of these neighborhoods that are close to us and everything, and you can go to our schools. Or
Mm-hmm.
make it easier to build your public schools, but are being funded by our wealthy dollars. But
Mm-hmm.
black folk, they can stay right there. And even during the 60s too, like this is why Fred Hampton was killed, because he was
Right.
building a rainbow coalition, bringing black, Puerto Rican, white working class people in Chicago together, and that's why he
Could
was
you tell
a
people the real way he was killed? The real way he was killed, because I feel like when we're taught in school, we get kind of like a milk toast story about it, or a whitewash story about it.
Okay, so Fred Hampton was actually drugged by his bodyguard William O'Neill, who actually
Oh, I didn't know that part.
yeah, because William O'Neill, what a lot of people don't know, is he was an FBI informant. And so he got close to Fred Hampton. And when the FBI and Chicago police were going to raid Fred Hampton's apartment, William O'Neill provided the floor plans. He said, "This is the room where Fred Hampton
Mm-hmm.
sleeps." So while Fred Hampton, was drugged and was knocked out,
Mm-hmm.
police, they shot over 80 times into the apartment, almost killing everyone. and they shot.
Yeah, his kids died too, didn't they?
No. Here's the thing. His wife,
Mm-hmm.
who was pregnant at the time with his son Fred Hampton Jr., was
Mm-hmm.
lying right next to him.
Oh.
Here's the thing. None of the bullets hit her or her unborn
Wow.
child. That they all hit him, you know.
Wow.
And then when he still lived, the police officer walked up and shot him in the back of his head, saying he's as good as dead now. And the effed up thing about it was that they're still trying to say, well, the Panther shot first, but when other investigators saw, no, the shots were shown firing into the apartment.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much almost, I think, become well documented now, even if it's not necessarily broadcasted. You know that this was an assassination. This was or even an execution. You could even maybe go as far as say it was an execution. But you know, I think that the thing that I think the Panthers, you know, I mean, because I'm not super educated on them, but the impression I've always got of them is that, you know, I think their original mission was a good one. I mean, we need somebody to police the police. In fact, if I had it my way, we would create a government division called the Black Panthers, named after that type of, you know, mission, or just the Panthers, whatever it is, whether, you know, to police the police, just have a division of the government that does that. But I mean, I think that the version of the Panthers people think of is not the initial version where it was like they very much stuck to, you know, what their mission statement was, which was, and I think eventually it kind of got, you know, corrupted a little bit by some of its later leaders, but I'm not sure if I'm all faced with that. I just don't know why certain people have one impression of the Panthers versus another, and I was hoping maybe you could try to, you know, elaborate on that if you could.
So part of that is because depending on where you lived, you know, wherever you live, depending on which, you know, the version of the Panthers you saw was like the Panther chapter you were a part of. My dad, you know, was a former Black Panther up in New York
City. That's right, I forgot about that.
And the thing is that the original mission, of course, like you said, it was to police the police. You know, again, like we're going to stop police brutality. In fact, the original name was the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. We're going to police the police and we're going to defend ourselves. Later on, under the leadership of the brilliant Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, they expanded to the 10-point platform, which is we want housing for human beings. We want, you know, education that tells the full story. We want an immediate end and stop the police brutality. But what wound up happening to the Panthers was a lot of it was because of COINTELPRO, which was like the government counterintelligence program. What they did was that they sowed seeds of division within Panther leadership, because majority of the Panther leadership, a lot of people don't know this, but majority of your Panther leadership were women. There were a lot of women that were that were running some of the chapters. Most notably was Afeni Shakur.
Assata Shakur? Oh, Afeni Shakur, yeah.
Afeni,
Assata's aunt, right?
Yeah, the mother of Tupac's mom. You know, the mother of Tupac Shakur. You know, so yeah, there were some internal stuff, like there were some ego trips. Part of it had to deal with the fact that you, of course, had some who didn't have a college education versus those who had a college education, which was kind of ironic in a sense, because I said it was some, not everyone thought that way, but some people felt that, you know, if you were a college educated Black person, you were ultimately trying to become part of the system. But at the same time, you're asking some of your college educated comrades within the party to help handle the administrative stuff on the office, handling phone calls, developing systems, delivering the newspaper, helping write articles for the Panther newspaper. So what COINTELPRO did was that they played on some of these rivalries and egos and began just like, you know, using that to even widen the group. In fact, J. Edgar Hoover, who was the FBI director, even said a lot of the survival programs, which are like, you know, Panthers feeding kids breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because a lot of the Panthers realized, like, you know, kids can't learn when they're hungry. You know, kids actually learn when they get 3 meals a day. The Panthers also helped revolutionize healthcare. In fact, they actually helped come up with ways to help treat sickle cell anemia, put together free clinics, getting doctors to come volunteer at these clinics. They also started, like, you know, stressing hygiene and, of course, the importance of staying clean. You know, these are things that a lot of people don't know. How there's a book It's in
Hmm.
my library somewhere. I'll probably see if I can find it. I think maybe towards the end. But it talked
Yeah,
about
yeah.
how the Panthers revolutionized healthcare in many ways. Even WIC,
Right. Yeah, yeah. Now you mentioned that. Yeah, I think
yeah,
they were. Go ahead.
even WIC, women's, infants, and children,
Hmm. Yeah.
that was started by the Panthers. That was founded by the
Oh,
Panthers,
I didn't know that.
and because of that, those programs that the Panthers were coming up with, J. Edgar Hoover was like, okay, we need to eliminate these because these programs are actually attracting people. Because what made the
Hmm.
Panthers dangerous wasn't the fact that they carried berets or they practiced martial arts or they carried guns or they looked
Hmm.
cool wearing black jackets and blue shirts. What made them
Hmm.
dangerous was the fact that they could break the message down to the people, to the
Hmm.
masses. That's what made them dangerous in the eyes of the government. There were
Right.
a couple of things that also led to the downfall of the Panthers. Like one, of course, was um, and there's a really good book that talks about it called Black Against
Hmm.
Empire, and
That's a
that's
great title.
yeah, that's the name of the book. The author Arthur Bloom does a pretty good job, I think, breaking down some of the other things that kind of contributed to
Hmm.
the downfall of the Panthers. Two of the things that he mentions, which was ironic, was like when the Panthers were winning court cases, like the Panther 21 case, where 21 Black Panther up in New York City
Hmm.
were accused of trying to launch a terrorist attack, and they're all like found not guilty. It
Hmm.
kind of showed to their more moderate allies, white, black, and everything else, so that black revolutionaries can get a fair trial in the United
Hmm.
States. The other thing that ironically wound up hurting the Black Panthers, but at the same time
Hmm.
helping out the Black community for a time, was affirmative
Hmm.
action programs. As you start
Mm.
seeing a lot more Blacks starting to go to college and start getting into
Hmm.
a lot of these nice jobs, it was kind of like, how can you, as a member of the Panthers,
Hmm.
you know, tell people that the rebel that we need you, but at the same time though, if you're due to some of the stuff from like the struggles that they had in the streets as well as some of the early civil rights generations,
Hmm.
now I'm able to go to college on a full scholarship. I'm able to get like
Hmm.
a nice corporate
It
job and everything else. It was kind of like
it
those
would
things
be
that
like it would be like almost telling people not to reap the benefits of what they sowed.
yeah, that's the thing. So it's kind of like it was like a slippery slope in
Hmm.
some ways, you know what I mean? And so by like the early 80s, the Black Panthers were all but dead at this point. There was
Hmm.
only what went from a national organization went back to being its Oakland home.
Hmm.
Some former Panthers wound up becoming teachers. Some wound up
Hmm.
be, some of them wound up running for public office and winning.
Hmm.
Others, who were still part of the guerrilla underground, stayed underground.
Hmm.
So that's the thing, like even today, there's still a lot we don't know about the
Hmm.
Panthers. Like one of the things that I find interesting is how East Coast Panthers, when I say East Coast, I'm
Hmm.
really talking more so like the New York, New Jersey, were like different than their West Coast
Hmm.
counterparts.
Yeah.
Because in the New York Panthers, a lot of them, because of the long history of Pan Africanism and
Hmm.
civil rights in New York City, a lot of them, were also identified as Pan Africanists. Some of them
Mm.
also wound up
Okay.
taking African names. Like you had some that took names
Right.
like Afeni, Asada, Doruba, Shetiswile.
Was
Because
Stokely Carmichael a Panther? Because he took an African name too, didn't he?
yeah, there was like a brief time when the Panthers and SNCC merged, but
Okay. Oh,
but
that's right. That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
but he took his African name, I think, a little bit later because what wound up
Hmm.
happening is like he spent some time in Africa where he
Hmm.
spent time with Sekou Touré and Kwame Nkrumah. So he changed his
Yeah.
name from Stokely Carmichael to Kwame Touré to honor his mentors while he was in
That's what it was. Yeah.
when he came back to the U.S. Going
Hmm.
back and forth, and he did when that merger kind of fell through. He did find, I'm trying to remember the name of it. I think it's the All African Revolutionary People's Party, which
Hmm.
still kept like Pan Africanism at its core, but also some of the stuff from the Panthers, like working class people
Hmm.
power. Reaching around the like the black working class, if you will.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that but because like what I saw on the sixth to me was like, I mean, it's if it was basically almost like the reverse of Bacon's Rebellion in a lot of ways because it
Mhm.
was like it was just kind of like um it was the people who were being swindled attacking the wrong people, like, and being mad at the wrong people. It was the wrong kind of insurrection. Not that I think that there should have been an insurrection necessarily, but if there was going to be one, those weren't the reasons to, like that. Like, what they were basing it on. I kind of feel bad for some of these people in some ways, because I just feel like they've been completely fooled. And I mean, and I think we're so blind in a lot of ways to just. I think we're in such denial just of how how insane all this has been over these past 5 or 6 years. Because people forget it hasn't just been the past 4 years. This is when Trump started running. Like when I mean, the moment he announced, I was terrified. And about a week into it, when he started to rise up in the polls, I was like, he's going to win the nomination. and people thought I was crazy, and he did. And then every fear that I had of him is true. And I think that we have convinced ourselves that oh, it's just because people have different political parties. Like, yeah, I know that Trump isn't the first to do some of these things, but this is a bit different. This is a guy who just it was just a whole different animal. Because, like I said, there have been presidential candidates that I haven't liked before, but there haven't been many that I've been like utterly terrified of, like in terms of like if this person gets power, and like, yeah, I mean, I think every president abuses power to an extent, because I think anybody who has a position like that, because I think it's hard to judge some of them as people a lot of the time, because if any of us had that kind of power, just by default, our actions would have much more consequences, whether those consequences would be positive or negative. So when a president messes up, it's a lot more consequential, positive or negative, or than if I mess up something, like So, but it's when Trump is, I think, just in terms of someone who, I mean, this really has never. I can't think of a time when a president refused to leave office, other than maybe Nixon, if you count that. But even that was a little bit different. He at least tried to rig the election, it's just this whole. I think people don't realize what we just witnessed in a lot of ways. Like we witnessed a armed rebellion against the state capitol, and like the heart of the home. In the Civil War, the South never made it that far up. On 9/11, even though the U.S. Capitol was a target, they didn't make it there. And but that was a target for a reason, because it is like we call it terrorism, domestic terrorism. What Timothy McVeigh did, where he bombed a government building in Oklahoma. This is like the ultimate government building besides the White House. If you were to do the same thing at the White House, you'd get shot. Every single one of them, pop, 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 all dead. Like like this is what we're talking about here. And it is just amazing to me that people have pledged this cult-like loyalty to a man and mistaken it for pledging loyalty to a flag.
Well, it kind of ties back to what you said earlier with how a lot of people don't really know this. I would venture to say it's because people don't want to know this, or some people don't want people to know this information. See, it kind of talks about like how a lot of history is taught, especially when it comes to U.S. history. It's always about like the myth of American exceptionalism.
Right.
How we're the greatest country in the world and everything else. But how did we get to that point? We got there by.
How do you measure that?
We got to that point by screwing a lot of people over in the process. In fact, I remember, I think I saw something on Twitter a couple of weeks ago that said U.S. history is basically fan fiction, and I said,
I love that. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, and the thing is that it's pretty much propaganda, and propaganda is pretty much, the rule of propaganda is this: you make the lie big, you make it simple, you keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. The thing with Trump, while tragic, is Trump is a symptom of a larger problem.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about? The problem is the other thing with Trump, though, and that you hit on the head, is Trump is very terrifying. It's like these people. It ties back into basically racism. It's so ingrained in the fabric of the U.S.
Right.
That when you protest racism, people think you're protesting America. In fact, I mean, I know this has been said to death, I think, on social media, but it needs to be said here. Had that been Black Lives Matter protesters,
right,
we would have been shot.
Go to the videotape.
Yeah, we would have been shot. There was, Like, here's the thing. In fact, even like during the summer when we were protesting, like, saying please stop killing us, they had the National Guard, they had helicopters, they had tear gas, and
not just that, but the police were actively instigating the violence in a lot of cases.
Yeah, they were. But here they are storming the nation's capital, right? Like you said, the heart of the nation. The last time the U.S. Capitol was sacked was during the War of 1812.
Right.
So for over 200 years, even during the Civil War, that didn't happen. But during this time period, and mind you, the Homeland Security, FBI, CIA, they had this information for months. Trump was egging it on. Some of his sycophants in Congress, in the Senate, and in the House were egging this on. But then the minute it happened, some of them got scared. They're like, oh my God.
Real.
Yeah, they're like, oh my God, this is actually happening. And it's kind of like, are you surprised? Y'all were egging this on. Y'all were calling for an armed revolution. And this is the thing that I say, I don't want to hear anyone talk crap about Black Lives Matter protests, because this just confirms everything that we've been saying about privilege, systemic racism, police accountability, because the police show they have in fact, there's some of them were taking selfies.
Yeah. I'll say, as a whole, I commend the job that the Capitol Police did, but a lot of them, even still, like, if you're taking selfies with people who are doing this, that's ridiculous. And even still, the police presence was not enough. It should have been more. And the other thing is, it's like you said, with the double standard, like, we talk about destruction of property. I mean, we could talk about, the difference between protesters and rioters till we're blue in the face, but let's just say they're the same thing, just for argument's sake. If you're mad at people for destroying a business, how are you not pissed at them for destroying a government building? Like, and what worse destruction of property can you possibly get than that? You're mad at them. I mean, yes, burning down businesses is a tragedy. It's messed up. Like, people work really hard to build those things up, and it damages the community. But we're talking about the heart of the nation, like you said, and the heart of the nation's government. That's being stabbed. This was an act of revolution. Like you said, I'm glad you used that word. And it's just you did say something on Facebook a little while ago that I thought was interesting, where you said that it's healthy for people to hate their oppressors. I want you to elaborate on that a little bit.
Okay, sure. Absolutely. Well, the thing is, let me be very clear here. What I mean by it's healthy for people to hate their oppressors is because your oppressor knows what they're doing to you is wrong. They know deep down in their conscious that keeping you down is wrong, but they do it because out of fear and malice, out of fear that if someone like you or I were to come to power, that we're going to do to them what's being done to us, even though historically speaking that has never happened in this country.
Right.
And the thing is that it ties into what I consider the religious aspect. I'm talking about.
Continue.
You're supposed to hate oppression. Okay, you are supposed to hate the person who injustice and who is inflicting that injustice. People take the concept of what Jesus turning the other cheek. What a lot of people don't want to deal with is the Jesus of Nazareth who took bullwhips and chased the bankers out of the temple and said that my Father's house is a house of prayer, not a den of thieves.
Right. And even the turn the other cheek thing people must understand, because they think of it as like, he's being a pushover. No, he's not being a pushover. It's an act of defiance. It's like, hit me again. See what happens. See what happens if you hit me again. Like you think it's going to affect me? It's an act of defiance. Like, you can hit me as many times as you want and I will still stand.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing that really bothered me when I posted that it's actually healthy to hate your oppressors was the fact that I saw Black folk being like, well, hate is wrong and hate's such a strong word. And I'm kind of like, really? And I was like, really? I said, really, because no one tells, I even said, say that to a Palestinian who's being abused in Gaza right now. Say that to the indigenous people, not just through the Americas, but throughout the world, who have been dealt a shitty ass hand. You wouldn't say that to them. So why is it that when it comes time for us, and this thing that I that reminds me of the quote, or as Chuck D said in Welcome to the Terror Dome, every brother ain't a brother because of color, they might as well be undercover, is that why is it that we're the only group of people that instead of being told to hate oppression and to hate the ones doing the oppression, we're always told to forgive and forget, forgive and move on, and that's a problem.
So my thing is, because I had to really think about what you said for a little bit, because it's definitely something that you got to chew on a little bit. And I think because, typically as a rule, I'm like, I don't believe in hatred, period. I think it's always good to empathize, not sympathize, but empathize. Like, because there was a quote I heard about empathy not being endorsement. But I think that because I don't think I could ever hate an individual person because I don't know their life. I don't know the path they've walked. I don't know any of that. But I can hate that aspect of them, the oppressive aspect of who they are, the oppressive aspect of their character. I think I don't know exactly what you meant by that in term on which end of the spectrum you were on that, but like what I've found is that when I but we did talk about this a little bit, is that we're in different positions because of how we look, our skin color and stuff. Whereas I can kind of get to know an oppressor in the way, even if they're not oppressing me, get to know an oppressor in the way where it's like, I might be able to rub off on them or influence them. That's not as likely for you because, people are more likely to listen to people that they look like, and because it's more dangerous for you and it's more personal for you. You're closer to it. Even though the other person is far away, you're closer to their hatred. And I think it's just so I think it's a difficult thing to chew on, but I think that we have to hate oppression wherever it is. I mean, we can reach individual people. I mean, there is that Daryl Davis guy, and there's actually a lot of people who even find what he does controversial. You're familiar with Daryl Davis?
Yeah. I heard about Daryl Davis attending Klan rallies and converting people from the Klan. And the thing is, to go back a little bit, is that because I know we talked about this before. It's like that's a certain thing that you can do. You know what I mean? You and other white people can do that. I can't afford to do that because that means because my life is at risk at the end of the day. And the thing is that like the person who's doing the oppressing, it's kind of something that I touched on before, is that if you know what you're doing is wrong, but you're still choosing to do it, as far as I'm concerned, I have no respect and no empathy for you because you know what you're doing is wrong. It's one thing if like you did some effed up stuff, and look, we all have done some things but we're probably not proud of when we're in our past. But if you truly you genuinely are remorseful, you regret that happened, and you are definitely taking steps to try to improve from who you were 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, how many years ago that happened, I can at least respect the fact that you've tried, and I can at least be willing to meet you halfway. But if you've been doing this for so damn long, and at this point, you're just like not refusing to change despite all the evidence to the contrary, it's like,
my question would be, although you probably have a I'm sorry to interrupt you. My question would be, although I think at a certain point it is willful ignorance, but the first question I would ask would be, is this person doing this because of ignorance or malice or both? And second, how much of this is willful ignorance? And third, willful ignorance is obviously never okay, but is it something that's worth trying to reach out to?
Well, this is the thing I have a problem with, the whole ignorance versus willful ignorance, because ignorance is simply not knowing. You know what I mean? And we've all been ignorant of stuff. We're still ignorant of many things. The willful ignorance thing is you don't even want to know what's going on. And from my perspective, if you refuse to know what's going on because you want to stick to that myopic view of the world, that's my way or the highway, it's like, and I'll give you an example. This actually happened not to a friend of mine, but to his sister, who has like these very anti-Islamophobic views. And I asked her, have you talked to a Muslim? Have you read the Quran? And she said, I don't need to read that. I'm like, you should read the Quran. And I said, because if you read the Quran, you would find that the word peace is mentioned throughout the Quran so many times. And when they talk about jihad, they're not talking about external holy war. They're talking about like the spiritual, within
Right.
themselves.
Well, I thought it was both. I thought that depending on the context, it could be either one.
Yeah,
because but jihad was always self-defense. I always say Islam, when people say Islam is not a religion of peace, I say you're right, it's a religion of self-defense, because it's about they're not gonna, there's Allah loveth not aggressors is one of the things it says. And but if Muslims, if and they believe this on a micro and macro level. If I'm not Muslim, so and anyone who's more knowledgeable about this subject would correct me, but if you strike at them, they will strike back. The thing where I think it gets twisted with these terrorist groups and things like that is that they have a warped view of, and maybe this is a very privileged thing for me to say because I have not been in their shoes, but in my mind they have somewhat of a warped view of their own oppression and the solution to it. Because I think that sometimes they end up in this hypocrisy where they strike back against their oppressors, but then also oppress the people in their population as a desire to retain power. And we talked a little bit, I think, about the difference between Islam and Islamism, where Islamism is a governmental ideology that believes in a theocratic, extreme interpretation of Sharia law applied to government. And Islam is just a religion, and there's a million different ways that people practice that religion, just like there's a million different ways people practice Christianity or Judaism or Hinduism or any of that stuff.
Yeah, and the thing is that a lot of people always want to talk about, what you talked about, where people want to take like the most extreme examples. But I'm kind of like, but Christianity has some very effed up characters in it as well. Ku Klux Klan, some of these neo-Nazi groups identify as quote unquote Christian organizations, but yet they preach hatred. It's like people, they want to cherry pick like certain aspects of a religious text, and it's any religion, because every religion has been guilty of this, where they'll take a certain text to use it as a tool to justify oppressing people, even if there's like 50 other chapters saying you're supposed to love and come together and speak up on behalf of those who are marginalized and are voiceless and have been outcasted from society. The problem is, though, and this is kind of like this perverted Western view, I guess you would say, where it's kind of like, Islam is, they want to say Islam's a violent religion. I'm like, no, Islam's the word peace literally is in the word Islam. If Islam were such a violent religion, then why aren't we all attending madrasas? Or
doesn't Islam mean surrender?
Yeah, it means surrender to peace.
Think of the irony of that, about what we think of Islam, and Islam, the word means surrender. And we view them as these, warlords and things like that. And the word means surrender. And it's like you said, surrendering yourself to God and, and God's will. And, that's a theme in a lot of religions. In Christianity, they call it let go, let God. And same thing with Judaism. In Taoism, that's the entire religion is, going with the flow of Tao, so it's a concept that's in many religions. And, it's just, I think that and it's interesting you mention it, because I think one of the things that I think is, because people talk about the death tolls that happen in these countries in the Middle East, but I think that's just because of their government structure a lot of time. If you changed our government structure and constitution to the way theirs work, I guarantee you'd have the same thing from extremist Christian organizations. They're just afraid of going to jail or getting the death penalty, But after what we saw on the 6th, is that really that crazy of a viewpoint for me to have?
No, I wouldn't say. No, that's definitely not crazy. In fact, because the thing is that a lot of people also don't forget to talk about the rise of the evangelical and their support for this Trump. In fact, a lot of them were like saying Trump was God's chosen, and we have to defend God's chosen. And the thing is that I'm like, how do you know the will
idolatry?
Of God?
It's idolatry.
Exactly. That is so. Like you said, you hit the nail on the head. It's like, and my other thing is, how do you know the will of God? Did God tell you Donald Trump was his chosen? Did God specifically say like the Trump family is the anointed one to rule the United States? No, you don't know. It's like people who claim that the end of the world is coming. It says that
you will not know the day or the hour.
Yeah, you'll or it'll come like a thief in the night. A thief doesn't tell you when
Exactly.
they're coming. You know.
Right, right.
But that's the problem, though. They take like a perverted form of religion, whether it's any of the Abrahamic faiths, and will use it to justify their BS. You know,
Hmm.
there's an article I read a couple of years back, um, and it talked about American Christianity versus Christianity. And
Hmm.
American Christianity typically was a way to justify, again, American exceptionalism through the religious means,
Hmm.
whereas Christianity was about challenging status quo. In fact, I
Hmm.
think I saw a meme like literally a few years ago where it said if Fox News existed in 33 AD, and it was like breaking news, a socialist hippie executed
Yep.
Texas governor, he got what he deserved, you know. And it's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I can see them saying that, you know.
If Jesus walked into a church today, they'd crucify him all over again.
Yeah, they turn him away and all that. It's sad, you know. It really is sad because people will cherry pick, and then when you call them out on it, it's like, well, you gotta know the context. So let me get this straight. You don't know the context of all the other stuff you're saying, but the minute I challenge this one thing, all of a sudden you want to talk
Hmm.
about context because you don't even want to hear the difference. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And that ties into a lot of things that are going on that happened in like a few days ago. Like
Hmm.
I'm literally just like, you guys, it's like that old saying goes, be careful what you wish for because you
Hmm.
just might get it.
Yeah.
Because sure enough, a lot of those people were calling for revolution, like some of these Republicans and the
Hmm.
Senate and the House changed their tune, says we're certifying the results. We recognize Joe Biden as president
Hmm.
and Kamala Harris as vice president. And I'm just like, it's amazing what like getting punked will do to you, reveal your true colors.
Hmm. And you know what? I think that I remember back in 2016 they attributed a lot of Trump support to economic anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think honestly, I mean, I know that that term was very problematic in terms of covering up the truth, but I think that there was something to the anxiety piece of that because I feel like people just when they're not exposed to things they aren't familiar with,
Mm-hmm.
they just form their own opinions about it without any evidence. And I told my girlfriend recently, and for those listening, I've mentioned before on here, my girlfriend's she's from Ecuador, and she has to go back next week because that's just it's how immigration policy works. You can only be here for a certain amount of time before you go back and then come back. Um,
Yeah.
but she but I told her I met her when she was only here. She hadn't even been here for 3 weeks yet. Um, and the other day I told her I wish everybody knew somebody like you, like and because if they did, there would be a lot less of these problems. Like just when you get to know someone, and I already had empathy for people who come to this country, but when you get to know them on a very intimate level, you start to understand and see things like first of all, there's a lot of things you don't even think about that don't even occur to you. Like she comes from Ecuador is relatively homogenous in terms of culture, not entirely, but somewhat. A little bit more than this country is. So there's actually cultures that she is not typically exposed to there that coming here she gets exposed to, and then I have to try my best, without experiencing those cultures firsthand to explain them to her. Like the other day we were watching Black Panther, and she was like, are those how is that how black people talk here? Like, I thought they talked differently. And I was like, no, it's an African accent, it's different. And I explained like, how sometimes like the cultural differences between people who are recent African immigrants and people who have like been here for generations, who descended from slaves and stuff like that. And she finds it interesting. But then there's things like, I've had the experience of knowing a little bit of a taste of the experience of what it's like to be a foreigner, because when I go into her mom's house, her mom doesn't speak English. Not only that, but her mom is a Spanish teacher remotely for Ecuadorian students. And and so that's like, and for people listening right now, I want you to kind of use this analogy. So it's not like she's teaching these kids Spanish. It's like she's their English teacher, but it's Spanish, like, I mean, so that's something I had to consider. And having to, go through that language barrier, because my girlfriend over time she's fluent in English basically now. And at the beginning she was proficient, but not quite fluent. And we kind of had to bridge the gap sometimes. But it's just been an amazing learning experience. That, and you realize how much courage and bravery it takes to take that monumental step and just come here and leave everything you know behind, um, and all that stuff, like, and then have to learn a language, and then we act like we're the ones who are inconvenienced by it, like when it's way more of an inconvenience for these people. In fact, I had to continually remind myself sometimes, because she's someone who she's the type of person who shows you how she feels more through actions than words. So sometimes she won't always tell you how she feels, but like she'll do something where it's like, oh, I see how how much she appreciates me. And I had to remember that this girl was making an extra effort every time she spoke a word to me, like because of the language barrier, and so these people are making this monumental effort for coming over here, and then what are they greeted with? This is why I think these people who do this, who are courageous enough to take those steps and go over those hurdles, when there are people in West Virginia who are too afraid to leave a job that gives them black lung because they're scared to do anything different, like, and it's just a situation where, there's so much value to people who have that type of courage and ambition, and we should be harvesting that as much as we possibly can, not asking it to go away.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me reverse back a little bit, because you touched on the economic anxiety piece for some things. Well, I say there is an element of truth to that, because despite the 8 years of Obama, like, we still hadn't recovered from the recession of 2008.
Right, we were on track, but we weren't fixed.
Yeah, we were not fixed at all. I mean, yeah, part of it you could definitely say was because of Republican obstructionism, but you also gotta say blame also falls on the Democrats as well, because Democrats weren't willing to fight for a lot of these things. Would have been a lot stronger, like stronger financial regulations, a higher wealth tax, which would definitely be able to help use to invest things in infrastructure, which will create more jobs. And as well as the fact that, like, one of the things that Bernie was talking about on his presidential primary back then was the beginnings of a Green New Deal, which would not only help protect the pensions of a lot of the coal miners, but also help help them transition to a lot more cleaner, greener, and healthier jobs.
And some of them weren't even receptive to that. Some of them, that was too much for them to, handle in terms of a change.
Yeah, and that's part of that kind of ties back to, propaganda, like coal, like, the phrase "coal is king." Yeah, coal is king, but it's killing you.
Yeah.
That's why, like, my maternal great grandfather was very adamant that all his kids get out of West Virginia. He was like, all my grandfather and his brothers, they all joined the military, and for my aunts, my great grandfather told them, don't marry someone who works in the coal mines or the lumber yard, because you'll never get out. A lot of them wound up marrying teachers and going to Ohio or Virginia, Maryland, or some went out to the West Coast, because it was like it was a lot better than dying early because of black lung. And even then too, it was like the part of the transition, that Bernie was able to explain in a way that some were receptive to it, versus Hillary was able to explain it, was that the transition period, your pension will be protected, you'll still be getting paid, and on top of that too, you'll be able to get quality health insurance, so you can get like better treatment sooner rather than before it's too late. Clinton, kind of came off like, coal mining's done, it's never coming back. And for a lot of people, especially those who come from coal mining generations, where like coal mining is a family job, it's kind of insulting. It's like you're insulting legacy. Whereas Bernie was like, I'm honoring your legacy, but you gotta recognize things have to change, for the better. If you want to leave a world for your children to play in and around, these are the things we have to do, and this is how we're going to do it. But we can't do it without you. We're going to protect the pension. We're going to protect your pay. We're going to make sure you get, like the training needed to transition, but we're going to do it in a way that respects your dignity, And part of it, like messaging, and the thing is that like that was the difference,
Right.
But so, and then that ties into the economic anxiety. And the thing is, whenever there's economic anxiety, you start seeing the rise of xenophobia, the fear of the foreigner, fear of the unknown, and people. I mean, we heard this coming up, like, when we were in middle school, like these people coming here taking our jobs, and I'm looking at some of these folks like, dude, you're 12, like, what job do you have? It's like, or like, if they're taking your jobs, then why? I don't see, you applying to be a mechanic or becoming a garbage collector or working a job that you wouldn't even work during your worst nightmare. So don't get mad. And then two, like years later, it's kind of like, immigration was actually ironically slowing down a little bit.
Now for Mexico, I think more people immigrate into Mexico now than Mexicans come into the U.S. Right?
Exactly. Like there's more Mexicans going back to Mexico because the economy stabilized. And I said if you want, in fact, I even said that some of these folks are like, if you don't want people coming from Latin America, then stop jacking up their elections. Maybe if we stop being too heavily.
Yes. Oh my God, I'm so glad you brought that up.
Like maybe if you stopped heavily like trying to F up their democratically elected elections and jack up their economies, maybe they would.
Could you explain some of that history a little bit? Because I think a lot of people really are not aware of just how much we have interfered and meddled in Latin American affairs, because I think we've done a very good job of keeping that quiet.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope they're ready for the tea because I'm about to spill it. So basically, the involvement of the U.S. in Latin America actually goes back to like the 1800s. So basically,
I didn't know it went back that far.
Yeah. So basically, what happened was, like, of course, Mexico. Technically, you could say I'm going to start with Haiti because
right, okay.
Because Haiti is in the Caribbean, and I do consider it a Latin American country.
They speak a Romance language, so it is.
Romance language. Exactly. Because when Haiti overthrew France, this is like by 1804, Louverture, Dessalines, they overthrew France. The U.S. began imposing sanctions on Haiti. This is like under Jefferson, who was president at the time. He began imposing sanctions against Haiti and kind of was trying to basically either limit or forbid trade to Haiti.
Yeah, because he had a good relationship with France. He had a very good relationship with France, so that would not have made him happy for them to overthrow them.
Yeah, Jefferson was a Francophile, he was a lover of everything French. And then then a few years later, when Mexico began having their independence against Spain, and the rise of like Vicente Guerrero, who was the first Black president on, I guess you could consider, the American mainland, a lot of folks were shocked because they were like, if word gets out there's a Black man who's a president, that's going to encourage Black folks to start trying to lead uprisings here, So they began like, oh my God, like trying to. This is like before, I guess, the rise of intelligence officers, right?
Yeah. So you know what's interesting? Pushback happens more when people are pushed on. Yeah. I think that's something that people have constantly forgotten throughout the course of history, whether it's in their personal lives or on a macro level in terms of just historic proportions.
Yeah, and so what wound up happening is like what really started getting the U.S. involved more in Latin America was like the Spanish-American War, when the U.S. was beat Spain and they're able to get Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines at the time, but we're focusing mainly on, of course, like Latin America. We're not really getting to Asia. But what that did was that it gave the U.S. a stronger foothold to really start overseeing a lot of these policies. One of the things that also began happening too was that U.S. started opening up corporations like the United Fruit Company, which dominated, was like the number one selling company. We know it as Chiquita now, but Chiquita used to be known as the United Fruit Company. And
I didn't know that.
And the United Fruit Company was responsible for a lot of civil unrest whenever there was like rise of populist movements. The first time, from what I can recall, that they actually had a coup was in Guatemala against Jacobo Arbenz, who was democratically elected, and he was going to he started a program of land redistribution where he was going to nationalize land, take land away from the United Fruit Company and redistribute amongst the Guatemalans to help with agriculture, mining, etc. And what wound up happening is they instituted a coup that ousted Arbenz, and Arbenz had to flee. It was pretty much in exile for most of his life. They tried the same thing in Cuba against Fidel when Fidel had the Cuban Revolution, but Fidel had survived many assassination attempts that he died in 2016 of old age. In the Dominican Republic, the U.S. actually helped support the Trujillo, the dictator of the Dominican Republic, for 31 years. Even though he started programs like he was responsible for the Parsley Massacre on the Haitian-Dominican border, as well as like he started this program called the Blancamiento, or the whitening of the race,
Yeah, yeah.
encouraging more European immigrants to come to the Dominican Republic.
Hmm.
According to, allegedly, FDR said about Trujillo, like, I don't care that he's a son of a bitch as long as he's my son of a bitch. You know, pardon. That quote's allegedly attributed to FDR. I'm not really sure if it is, but it does sound plausible because like Trujillo was
Yeah,
in power for up until 1961 when he was assassinated.
yeah. And just real quick, I think one thing that a lot of people might be ignorant of, whether it's by their fault or no fault of their own, is the fact that like Latin America, like it's not like just like Latino is not really like a race. Like Latino is just a description of an ethnicity, which implies culture and ancestry combined. But there are white Latinos, there are black Latinos, there are like mixed
Asian.
Latinos, there are Asian Latinos, there are indigenous Latinos or Latinos with indigenous ancestry.
Yeah, in fact, you remember in fact, before we go back to the history, that kind of ties into that because I remember one of my favorite baseball players was Bruce Chen. Yeah, he was Chinese, but he was Chinese Peruvian. His parents were from
Right,
Peru, but they were Chinese.
right.
So he could speak English, Spanish, and Chinese, and that's why his
Hmm.
name was. I was like, wow, it's like that kind of opened my eyes to the history. But
Hmm.
then, like going back to the history of U.S. involvement, responsible for a lot of coups, like Chile, the Salvador Allende
Hmm.
regime, who was democratically elected and was helping increase women's literacy. The CIA overthrew him in the 70s, putting in the Pinochet regime.
Hmm.
You had, even in our lifetime, you had an attempted coup against Hugo Chavez in
Hmm.
2002 in Venezuela. And in 2009, I remember, I think it was like, yeah, it was my October of '09. It was senior year of high school.
Hmm.
We sponsored a coup in Honduras, which overthrew the democratically elected regime and put it in
Hmm.
the regime that's in now. Like, you know why? Because
Yeah.
and
Go
all
ahead.
these things were for economic reasons, and
Right.
then we wonder why is it that we're during like that period of destabilization, you saw a little bit of an increase of
Yeah,
immigration.
and just so I might elaborate on that a little bit, and you can tell me whether I'm on point here or not. But I mean, because the United States is a capitalist system, naturally we are going to favor more economically from other capitalist systems. And sometimes I mean, we wouldn't want fascism in our own country, well, until recently, but but we're fine with it in those countries because fascism makes money. Fascism makes a lot of money. It makes a ton of dough. And if we have that kind of relationship that we have not only developed but also planted into those countries, we have a lot of economic gain from it. And it has affected us all the way to the point of when we favored the Contras over the Sandinistas, where the Contras we looked the other way as they brought new types of drugs into the country that caused an entire epidemic that would last for like 2 decades or whatever it was. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just we so the U.S., because of our government structure, we favor capitalist systems over socialist systems. But not only that, but we favor fascist systems over communist systems, which is interesting because in
Mm-hmm.
World War II we sided with a communist power in order to fight a massive fascist power. The communist power being Russia, ruled by Joseph Stalin, and the fascist power being Nazi Germany, ruled by Hitler. And
And Mussolini, Italy, yeah.
yeah, Mussolini was fascist too. Yeah, yeah. And so it's we have a lot to gain from this. Really is just low key imperialism in a lot of ways and
Yeah, that
colonialism.
that's basically is. It's the United States of Empire. The thing that's also ironic is that we actually did a lot of business with Yugoslavia, which was a communist country under Joseph
Hmm.
Tito, because his communism allowed for people for like a lot of cooperatively owned enterprises. So
Hmm.
it was kind of like
Yeah.
it's communism, but the people are owning businesses, and there was an increase of entrepreneurship. That's why the U.S. up until Tito's assassination and the dissolution of Yugoslavia, the U.S. was willing to do business with them because of that.
Right.
Um,
And oh, go ahead.
no, 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 no. You touched it. No, no, you
Okay.
had it first.
So yeah. But yeah, and like I think what has been lost is that we took a lot of people think about like the question of, oh, well, should we be more capitalist, should we be more socialist? I think that varies from country to country and society to society. I think different things work for different cultures and different populations because I mean, I don't think that you know communism could ever work in a country as large as ours, but in a country there was this one African country, I'm trying to remember what it was, um, where it had this communist leader for I think about 5 years. I forget his name, but improved a ton of things in the country. Like on a macro level, everything got better. There were some human rights violations where he had some people executed without probably a sufficient amount of due process. But if you think about it, and if we have a realistic view of our government and other governments around the world, we've done a lot of that stuff too, just on a more covert level, and we're more oblivious to it, I think, as a society. And I think also that, we I mean, even if you take a leader like Fidel Castro, depending on who you ask worldwide, they will have vastly different opinions of him. If you ask an American, he's a monster, but if you ask Nelson Mandela, he's a hero. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think that he's kind of both, because that's just the nature of men. That's the nature of humanity. And when you put people in positions of power, their bad traits and their good traits and their bad ideas and their good ideas are going to come out with much more dire consequences, positive or negative. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, when you mention someone like Castro and our violent opposition to him, I think that Castro, yeah, he had a lot of human rights violations, and I think he was extreme on a lot of things. And I think it's hard to compare sometimes. Like, for example, I think Barack Obama is a good guy. I admire him a lot. I thought he was a good president, but I didn't like how liberally he used the Espionage Act, and that had massive consequences for people. Like his use of the Espionage Act ruined some people's lives that really shouldn't have been, ruined. I mean, he was pretty harsh on whistleblowers. He softened a little bit towards the end of his presidency, but and I think that any leader you put in power, it's a spectrum, and I think that it's when we live in a society that favors one form of government over another, not only for our society but for every society around the world, because we want to benefit from it.
Mhm.
There's going to be propaganda. For me, it's never a question of is capitalism or socialism better. I say it depends on the issue.
Well, the thing is that like when you talk about power, I know like some people talk about like the saying power corrupts absolutely, but
Mm-hmm.
someone said like a good quote where he said like power doesn't corrupt, but what power does do is reveal. And
Yes.
that's the thing. Power reveals who people really are. You know what I mean? It's like
Mm-hmm.
my thing with Obama, and this kind of upset some folk, but I wasn't really a big fan of Obama. Yeah,
Okay.
like this presidential election was historic. I'm not knocking the
Mm-hmm.
historical value, but my thing was is that we need more than just representation. We need tangible
Mm-hmm.
plans. Every other people approaches presidents with a plan for themselves, whereas
Mm-hmm.
it's always representation. And the thing
Mm-hmm.
that bothered me the most was that when we were talking about even after his presidency was some stuff he was saying a couple months ago, like
Mm-hmm.
saying, well, we really shouldn't be saying phrase like demands or defund the police. But the thing is that he speaks that respectability politics stuff, the whole
Mm-hmm.
pull yourself up by a bootstrap myth. And I'm like, dude, you were an organizer in Chicago for a while. You
Mm-hmm.
know dang well that bootstraps that whole bootstrapism thing is a myth. And furthermore, when you talk about defunding the police, we have explained what defund the police means. Defund police
Right.
means reinvest in community, refund to our schools, refund to our mental health, refund to our public
Mm-hmm.
housing. We have been explicit. In fact, it was so ridiculous. Someone made a cartoon where Frederick Douglass is saying power concedes nothing without demand, and Barack Obama's like, well, demand is such a strong word. Why don't we rephrase it as this? Power concedes nothing without compromise, where two people get together and sit down. It was just like,
Mm.
but that's so true.
Compromise is always the first thing you go to, but when it doesn't work, you have to go to demand.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that I'm like, it's like we've been explicitly clear. And I've had issues with even some local politicians who especially
Mm-hmm.
during this past summer of the uprisings, they'll ride
Mm-hmm.
they'll ride the wave, but then it's like, well, I don't like the term defund the police, but I agree with the general principle. I'm like, bruh, we've been clear by what we mean by defund the
Right.
police, and
So.
you can't have it both ways. You can't be like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the phrasing, but I understand the method. It's like we have that phrasing for a reason because these budgets are bloated.
Yeah. So I don't have a problem I don't have a problem personally with the phrase defund the police.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of a effectiveness standpoint, because people just have such short attention spans, when people hear that, there's an immediate assumption that they go to. So I don't know if it's the most effective thing to say. I don't know what a better I can't think of a better thing, at the moment. But I think that it's I don't have a problem with it in terms of like what the idea is. I have more of a problem with it in terms of, is this effectively going to reach people in terms of what people are trying to accomplish and to join the cause if they have, if it has to be explained to them constantly, you know, if it's not more simplified. Because like it or not, people are just, like I said, we don't pay attention very much. We don't like to have people have to explain things, you know. And I think that, you know, there's a book by I don't think I finished reading it, but you ever heard of the Malcolm Gladwell book? Oh God, what's it called? Oh my God, what's The Tipping Point? The Tipping Point.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, he talks about like the concept of stickiness and like things that stick, you know. And I feel like defund the police doesn't pass the stickiness test in a lot of ways.
Well, this is the thing, like where I slightly push back on that, and I push back on
Mm-hmm.
it from the standpoint of no matter how you phrase it, defund police, community control of police, abolition of
Mm-hmm.
police. When you're fighting for racial equity,
Mm-hmm.
you gotta be willing to piss people off. You know what I mean?
True.
Like, there's just no other way around it. You can phrase something as nice or as flowery as can be, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, if you're fighting for racial equity and equality, people are not going to care what you say or how you say it.
Right.
It's like you're trying. They view it as you're trying to take something from me when you don't lose something when people gain the same treatment you do. It's kind of like the same people who make $30,000 a year, but they freak out when someone is talking about we're going to tax the billionaires. It's like, dude, you make $30,000. That plan doesn't affect you. You know what I mean? It's like,
well, I just had something pop into my head a little slow. Defund and distribute. Like, you know, defund to distribute. Like, you know, defund to distribute to other things in a lot of ways. I feel like that would be, if you add the second layer of it in a very you know, concise way, because no one wants to hear like a 8-word long sentence. No one's going to listen to that, you know. Like, but like, I mean, I feel like the redistribution element is, and maybe redistribute, because I know that's a buzzword too. Everything's a freaking buzzword now. But like, you know, if we reveal that, oh, we're not taking it away from the police just to punish them, we're taking it away from them so we can invest in other things, like which is the exact explanation of defund the police. You know, and so the police don't have to be these like one-man Swiss Army knives of jobs that they are not qualified to perform. You know, I mean, do you really want someone who only has a high school degree trying to, unless they've had years of experience in the mental health field, trying to calm someone down with a mental illness? No, that's a terrible idea, especially if they have a gun, because they're gonna be scared naturally because they won't know what's coming at them. Like, you know, and when people get scared and they have a gun on them, like, that's what happens. Like, I mean, it's just a bad idea. Like, I think that we get so caught up in, I don't like the term identity politics because it's become such another buzz term because people have such different things when they hear it. But that's really what it is. We put our identity so much in, you know, blue or red or black or white or, you know, all that stuff. And I'm not one of these people who's like, we all need to have a balance and come together. No, but you have to have common sense. And if we think of these things just as, when we reduce things to their labels, we really have no idea what we're talking about. It loses all the complexity and nuances of the issue, and we feel like we have to, like, you know, pick a side here, when a lot of times, you know, and we lose sight of the nuance. And that actually brings me to the whole idea of, you know, cancel culture, now that I think about it, because I know this is a bit of a tangent, but I feel like my problem with cancel culture isn't, you know, that, oh, you can't say anything anymore. That's not my issue with it. My issue with it is it just feels so phony to me. It doesn't feel sincere. It feels like what people do to point the finger away from themselves.
Well, I mean, with cancel culture, you know, I do have, like, I think I may have mentioned this before. I kind of have like mixed views on it because, like you, I think when people like dig up a person's like old tweets or old posts from like a decade ago, something like that, and it's clear they're not the same person anymore and they've apologized for it, it's kind of like, why hold that over their heads? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, you know, it reminds me a lot of Michael Vick. You know what I mean? You know, Michael Vick, you know, he's been apologized for dogfighting, is an animal rights activist now, and people still want to hold over his head nowadays, like what, 13, 14 years later, that he founded Bad News Kennels. I'm like, he's not the same person anymore. Like, and they're upset because he was able to get like a second chance in the NFL with your Philadelphia Eagles and
Yeah.
everything else.
Had one of the best years I've ever seen a quarterback have too.
Yeah, which was also historic because here he was out of prison and still dominating. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. But
Where
yeah, and oh, go ahead. Sorry.
you know the thing with cancel culture, I think where I agree with it, but to like a certain extent is like the accountability aspect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like own your shit. You know what I mean? Hey, it's like, hey,
Yeah.
listen, be like, hey, you know what? I fucked up, I screwed up, I've learned a lot. I do thank people for holding me accountable for my actions. I think where it gets where counter culture kind of gets like ridiculous is like when people want to rehash that over and over again. When they always want to focus on the negative, even if you've done and are still doing so many positive things.
You know who's actually I think a good example of that. And I actually kind of feel sorry for him because I feel like the sincerity of his remorse and even repentance got just lost in what he did. Michael Richards, the guy who played Kramer, remember what he did? Like he went on the stage and just screamed the N-word a bunch of times because he was having a bad set, and this guy was heckling him, and he just kind of lost his mind. He went on I think it was David Letterman, or actually, I'm sorry, Jerry Seinfeld was on David Letterman not long after that, and Michael Richards was on a video call, and like Michael Richards, he was just expressing sincere remorse for what he did. He was like, I don't know what happened. I don't know what came over me. And he said, but obviously there's something inside me that I need to fix that I was not aware of, which is basically the most sincere, real apology you can give for being that racist. Like it really is. But people were laughing at him because they thought he was like joking. But no, he was being dead serious. And like Jerry Seinfeld had to say, he's not kidding, guys. Like, stop laughing. He's trying to be sincere here. But like he just became this big joke to people. And not that I think he was the most talented guy in the world or anything, but I just think that's an example of, I don't think that I think people should be held accountable, but I don't think that they should be irredeemable. Like I think that it's just it's one of those things where, I think it makes people feel like they have to put themselves into a box. Like they either have to dig their heels into what they said because no apology will ever be enough, or they have to, almost go the other way so much that they're fake about it. Like, I mean, it's just and I think that the problem with, just that whole element, it just makes me really upset. And I think you mentioned something about like digging up people's old tweets and what they've done in the past. I think that's ridiculous too, because are any of us the same people that we were 10 years ago or whatever it was?
Yeah, it's like, look, I know, like back in the day, like some if like people like were tweeting some stuff like when they were like in high school, had people find out what they were saying, then people were looking at them like, what the heck? It's kind of like because people do people do stupid stuff, you know what I mean? And like I said, I think like especially when they've shown sincere remorse, that they're definitely not that same person anymore. It's like this. It's like I want to tell a story of what happened over the summer.
Okay.
So I actually had, I'm not going to mention their name again out of respect.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I respect their personhood.
Mm-hmm.
But they had invited me out to do a yoga retreat, because they were doing like a thing to really help demystify yoga, break it down for communities of color, and we were doing something for Breonna Taylor, and so she invited me out. But she was one of my bullies from back in the day, and I went and I took her to the side and I said, you may not remember this, but you bullied me for a time. And she was shocked, but she had apologized. And I said, listen, I just wanted to let you know, because I said that because that hurt me, you know what I mean? And that hurt me for a long time. And but the thing is, actually talking, explaining how I felt, and everything else definitely helped clear the air. Even talking with her, it opened my eyes up because she was going through bullying as well. And the thing is, that kind of like made me realize, like that hurt people really do hurt people. And she was like, I could have stopped the cycle, but I passed that hurt on to you, and I didn't even realize it. And so, but I think it's like it's one thing when you want to hold someone accountable when it's like, hey, like what you said and what you did hurt me,
Mm-hmm.
and and talking with them and clearing the air, and they're like, oh snap,
Mm-hmm.
it's clear they're not the same person. I said she did that when she was 13, 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
She's 28 now, and I kind of had to joke with her because like it's funny, like the person who once called me Fidel Castro's nephew is now is now is now arguing for socialism, and I like to say, ironically, I
Yeah.
think I had a role in that, but
Yeah.
that was. But like I said, like it's funny how things kind of work out. Her and I now have a
Mm-hmm.
really good friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, but it's one thing when you want to clear the air with someone. Hey, you may not have realized this at the time because you may not have been aware. You know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, though, it's kind of like if they've definitely shown remorse, don't
Mm-hmm.
hold it over them. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like the
Because that makes people not want to progress.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was about to say. Because people, it's like, what's the point of me trying to do good if you're going to keep holding all the bad stuff I did
Mm-hmm.
from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago
Mm-hmm.
over my head? It's like why it gets to a
Scarlet
point.
letter.
It's like why even try? And I think the thing is, if people are showing, like I said earlier, like they're showing like true remorse. They definitely don't think the same way anymore, and they definitely still show regret whenever they think about it. It's like, hey, they've said they're sorry and they've shown it with their actions. Why do you keep
Mm-hmm.
bringing it up so many times, right?
Yeah. So, and I think that we're in a really, I think you and I have a really interesting perspective on a lot of that because of, the area that we spent a lot of our lives in, um, and just on because we were exposed to a lot of different things, so we have a lot of different perspectives, and I think that you and I might have more of a nuanced view of, you know, when people make mistakes than some other people do, because it's just kind of how it is. But um, I think that you know going forward, I really do think empathy is the key to how this nation heals. And that I do, while I have a lot of, just, I don't know the word for it, misgivings about Joe Biden, I think he's a decent human being. And I think one of his strengths is that he's good at reaching out to people. He's good at connecting with people. And even if his policies aren't the greatest, I think that he can, the problem is he's naive sometimes. He's a little too naive about about his ability to do that, because there's certain situations where someone just can't be reached, and that took a long time for even me to learn. And I will try to reach almost anyone, but there's a point where I realize I'm not going to reach them. But I think that Joe Biden is a very empathetic person. I have some issues with him, like how early on in his career he kind of embellished a lot of his accomplishments and all that stuff. And he's not always been on the right side of certain issues, but the one thing he always does try to do, it seems like, is understand. And I think that's a good model just in terms of character for what we need as a country right now. We have to be able to have a dialogue with each other. We have to be able to, I think we have to get both out of our own defensiveness as well as our own, desire to, because I really think one of the things that one of the reasons why so many, white people had such a strong reaction to Trump in terms of on the left side of the spectrum is because it was like it was kind of like all the things that they would have had to acknowledge about themselves, like if another black president were elected, they could just be like, oh, that's the bad guy, look at the bad guy over there, see the bad guy, it's not me, it's him, he's the one who's messing everything up for you. And I think that and it just kind of made us very lazy in terms of our own progress and our own insights for ourselves.
Yeah, I'm going to say like maybe Trump was a reflection of their own mirrors in the image in the mirror. It's like
or their shadow,
like the shadow, like stuff they would have had to acknowledge about themselves. Because the thing is, this is where my perspective with the incoming administration with Biden and Harris, with Biden, yeah, I would say, this is from my perspective, Biden is more so. Trump was like the overt racism, you know what I mean? Was like more so in your face. Whereas Biden kind of represents a little bit more of the covert racism where, yes, I'll have some black folk in power, but I'm not going to truly go for certain policies that are really going to help black people as a whole. And the thing with Kamala Harris, and I know this is going to piss off the K-Hive, but I was not a big fan of her because of her record on criminal justice. Her nickname, when your nickname is Top Cop,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? That's going to give me pause. Like the fact that like when you look at some of the stuff that she did, yeah, a lot of people want to talk about like she had programs to help decrease recidivism, and I'll admit that's good. But if you weren't so busy locking up people and holding them in jail, even
Right.
if evidence was showing they were innocent, maybe there wouldn't need to be these programs.
My,
And then
my thing with,
and
I'm
the other
sorry, go ahead.
and the other thing too was like even during the primary, it was like there was no backbone. It's like 1 minute she's for Medicare for all, and then like the town hall the next day, oh, I'm not for Medicare for all. It's like, but you just said it the night before. And the one thing is like that I like in leadership is consistency. And with Bernie, whether you agree with him on some issues or not, you could tell he at least genuinely cared and he at least was consistent.
Right. No, Bernie is probably the most genuine politician you could possibly imagine.
Yeah. And my thing with this incoming administration is okay, yeah, they're in. Yeah, Trump and Pence are out. But we got to really make sure we hold them accountable.
Right. And I think with,
yeah,
oh, sorry,
especially
go
on
ahead.
criminal justice, especially on healthcare, especially on student loan forgiveness. Excuse me, on so many of these key issues, which actually like help a lot of folk out.
Yeah, actually, if I had it my way, the ticket would be flipped. Because, and here's why. Because Kamala Harris, I think she was on the wrong side of a lot of criminal justice stuff. Nickname Top Cop, all that stuff. But I also think that, and this can be a positive or negative depending on the circumstances. I think she has a little bit of Hillary Clinton in her in the sense that, and I mean this in a positive way, but it could also turn very negative. In that she knows what she needs to do for people to be happy with the job she's doing. And I think that's her top priority. Not necessarily in allegiance to any particular ideology, but more so what are people going to think of me if I do this? Now that can be dangerous, but I think that she could do it in a way where I think she's very good at reading the pulse of a community or a nation and knowing how to reach out to that or address it and what it needs when the moment calls for it. The Biden, I think, is really the ideal vice president that you could ever have, because he's the type of guy who, regardless of whether or not he has the best ideas, his ability to connect with people is real. And Biden, I think, I'm glad you brought up the racism thing with Biden, because yeah, I think Biden is to an extent racist, but I mean, I think he tries, but I think he's not willfully ignorant. I don't think he's ever willfully ignorant, but I do think sometimes he's stubbornly ignorant. Because I think there is a small distinction there. Because, like, willfully ignorant is like, I don't want to hear that. Stubbornly ignorant is more like, you find a reason why you try to justify yourself because you don't want to admit that you've been wrong. And I think there's a very slight difference there. And I think willful ignorance is a little bit more dangerous than stubborn ignorance, because stubborn ignorance, Biden is the type of guy who he does listen to people. And I think that is a strength here, because it's not like even if he doesn't always have the right idea initially, I think if he listens to people enough, where people talk him down enough, or talk him up enough, he can kind of move a little bit. I don't think he's so much of a flip flopper as he is, just someone who is malleable in the sense that he's willing to, receive information.
My thing is that you hold power accountable, whether you agree with it or not.
Right.
And the thing is that I will say this about Biden is, like, immediately after the most recent events, even he said if this was a Black Lives Matter protest, the response would have been very, very different, And my thing is that that's a nice acknowledgement. Still going to hold you accountable though, because the thing is that it's one thing to say something, it's another to do it, And one of the things that I learned growing up is the best apology is change behavior,
Yep.
And the thing is that if you truly have evolved from the Joe Biden of the '94 crime bill and helping, like, making it hard to discharge student loans during bankruptcy, it's definitely okay. still got to hold you accountable to all the things you're saying that you're going to do, because
Mm-hmm.
at this point, there's a majority in the House, Senate. You control the White House.
Yeah, there's no excuses.
As far as I'm concerned, as the saying goes, the ball's in your court now.
Mm-hmm.
And you have 2 years until like the next upcoming until like the next midterms, at least for the House, and for some of the
Right.
seats that are up.
Mm-hmm.
You got 2 years to really start implementing the agenda. And for those of us on the outside, we gotta use this time to really, really, really push for the policies that we want. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that, so what do you think, the number one priority going into a both for the Biden administration, for the new Congress, and for just the people of this nation as a whole? What do you think each facet of this country's, what's the word I'm looking for? Each facet of this country's pulse and, heartbeat, what do you think that their priority needs to be?
Okay, so it's getting deep. So I'll try my best. So for Biden Harris, the priorities are one, getting the pandemic under control. Because right
Mm-hmm.
now, as we're seeing, is that we're surging. The vaccine distribution is being bungled on the daily,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a new strain. There's a new
Yeah.
strain of COVID going around that is so
Yeah,
far.
that once I heard that, I was like, oh shit. Please God, no.
Yeah. Colorado and California. Although I wouldn't be surprised if it's somewhere lurking in the East Coast, just waiting to pop up.
Were
But
we the first to develop that strain? That started here, didn't it?
the new strain, no, that new strain came from the UK.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the new strain, it came all the way from Britain, and apparently there's another strain in South Africa, and I'm just like, if that strain somehow gets over here, I'm like, we got two super strains, and with the bungled vaccine right now.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, I know Biden was talking about trying to get like 150 million, that's almost half of the country,
Mm-hmm.
vaccinated by I think April or May. That means you got to be doing 1.5 million vaccinations a day to get to those
Right.
numbers.
I'm actually trying to get a friend of mine who works for not the CDC but the department that Fauci runs. I think it's the Department of Infectious Diseases and Allergies or something like that. He works for that department. I'm trying to get him on here to discuss some of these things as well. So yeah, I would love to hear more about that, because initially, at least my understanding of what he said was like, yeah, the vaccine looks like it's effective, but that was before these new strains came out. That was before, all this other stuff started happening where the distribution had problems.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what his take on all this is.
Yeah, definitely. So going back to Biden Harris, it's
Mm-hmm.
getting the pandemic under control and trying to jumpstart the economy.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that will definitely, I think, help jumpstart the economy is student loan forgiveness. Because right now,
Mm-hmm.
this is like pre-COVID, and I think because the Cato Institute, which is a institute not known for its progressive views, they're a libertarian conservative think tank.
Yeah.
They came up with a study, I think it was like late 2019, that said
Mm-hmm.
student loan forgiveness would actually be the boon the economy would need, because
Mm-hmm.
in a consumer-based economy, when student loan debt's forgiven, that means you're able to save more for retirement. People are buying more cars, people are buying more homes, people are doing more
Mm-hmm.
investments. That will actually help. They said like it will grow the economy by 30%, which is a good thing.
Wow.
Considering on where we are with COVID, if you really want to help start us on a good foot, you would cancel student loan debt. I mean, you would just do total loan debt forgiveness, because right now Biden's plan was like what 10,000, like just wipe 10,000 off the top and
Right.
but the thing is that's not good enough. It really
Right.
like some are saying at least knock off at least 50,000. I'm saying, whereas
Mm-hmm.
other people when venture capitalists
Mm-hmm.
and stockbrokers are like, just forgive the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, like, because even them,
Yeah.
I mean, like, and plus, even if you are someone who thinks that those people are like, pillars of financial wisdom, which sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't, depending on who it is. But, if those are the people you listen to, then listen to them in this
Yeah.
case, And the other thing that's bothering me is it feels like we're almost treating the pandemic and healthcare as a whole as separate issues.
They're
And I
not.
don't like that.
They're
They're
not.
not. They go hand in hand. It's like how can you possibly talk on one hand about we need to solve this pandemic and then cut any form of healthcare? If there's any time to pass universal healthcare, it's now.
Yeah, exactly.
In any form.
I was about to say that, we definitely would have like universal health care because COVID definitely showed how weak and fragile our healthcare system is.
Mm-hmm.
And having universal health care would definitely make it easier for people to go to the doctor to get treated, even if it's like not COVID related. At least it'll help get like other health issues under control, and I'm able to go to the doctor, and I don't have to worry about breaking the bank or putting my family into medical debt because we have that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I said this to you, I think, in a previous conversation about how everyone who gets on Medicaid never wants to go off. Every client I've ever worked with, once they've gotten Medicaid, it's like, where has this been all my life? So if we extended that to the entire country as an option, at least, what is the only thing that could possibly be stopping it is the infrastructure of our private healthcare system, which I will admit, yes, I do have, not for the executives so much, but more for the people who have jobs in that industry. I understand that a sixth of our economy is privatized healthcare industry. And yes, we can't just, dash all of that immediately because that would cause an economic crisis unto itself. But we have to start moving in this direction where people have more access. Obamacare was a step in the right direction, but it wasn't enough. I think the other things, and there's one thing that I realized about Obamacare, about why certain states are more fond of it than others. It's because the most important part of Obamacare was not the healthcare marketplace exchange. It was the Medicaid expansion.
Mm-hmm.
And the states that denied that, the people have not reaped the benefits of Obamacare. I mean, in a state like Pennsylvania, a lot of people like Medicaid and whether they understand, I mean, sometimes when you I've found that when you put anyone's name on something, it causes strong reactions. So I try to take people's names out of things when I describe it to them when it comes to policy and, programs and things like that. But whenever there's something related to the Affordable Care Act here, people tend to respond positively to it. People have shitty healthcare in places like, what was the state that my one client was moving to where it was no, I'm sorry, it wasn't a client. It was my parents have a beach house in North Carolina, and there's some people down there, who sometimes want some access to healthcare, and they hear that I'm a case manager, and they ask for some possible resources if I could look into them. And I found that North Carolina didn't accept the Medicaid expansion, it looks like. And so their access to healthcare is not nearly as good. So no wonder those people don't like Obamacare. They haven't reaped any of the benefits.
It's funny. Jay Leno. Remember when Jay Leno used to have his late night show and he used to have this segment called "Man on the Street," and he would do like this thing where, "What do you think about Obamacare?" People were like, "I hate it," but what do you think about the Affordable Care Act? I love it, even though it's the same thing.
Was that Jay Leno or Jimmy Kimmel?
I think it was Jay Leno. Jay Leno did that.
Okay.
Yeah, Jay Leno did that. Jimmy Kimmel did something about some of these people who are like, "Where was Obama when 9/11 happened?" I'm like, yeah, I'm like, Bush was president during that time. I'm like, what? But going back to that, it's like the same thing with the name. It's kind of like with the it's like, one of the things that one of the reasons why Obamacare wasn't as strong was because one is that they took out the public option, which would allow people to opt into Medicare and Medicaid.
Damn you, Joe Lieberman.
So they took that out, and then two is that instead of it being like one national exchange, it was like separate state exchanges.
Right.
Places. Because the thing is, there's going to be like a national one, which would have been like a single one. But instead they started saying, each state does something different. The problem is though, not every state had like the same capacity or like a good infrastructure when it came to like internet, cybersecurity to set up these marketplaces. So when some of these states started setting up these marketplaces, it was confusing where to get the forms, which forms to fill out, and everything else. So so that's what wound up happening there. And then and the other thing too, which I think you definitely described so eloquently, is like, some states that had the Medicaid expansion were able to see the benefits, where some who didn't, weren't able to reap the benefits. So it was like a whole mix. It was a whole mix of things that kind of bungled
Yeah.
Obamacare / the
And the
Affordable.
rollout was bad too. The rollout was pretty bad.
Yeah, the rollout was bad. There was all the technical issues, and
Mm-hmm.
that was
Yeah.
not fun, you know.
Yeah. So before I'm probably gonna try to wrap up our conversation. But before I end, I would like for you to read some poetry of yours, if you don't mind. I'll cut out the pause for you to. There's gonna be a pause while you go and get the book or whatever it is, so I'll cut that part out. But I'd love for you to just read some of that out and put that out to the masses.
Okay, great. I actually got my poetry book right here. As a matter of fact, actually,
Oh, nice,
that's
perfect.
so sorry. Let me just lift it up. So this is my debut
Yeah.
poetry. It came out February of last year, February
Mm-hmm.
23rd, 2020. It's written in blood. The
Mm-hmm.
anthology 2011 to 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to my friend Desmond for designing the book cover.
Is it the Desmond I'm thinking of?
No, this is a different one. This is a
Okay.
Desmond from college, but I know the one you're
Okay.
talking about though. Desmond
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
Desi Des, man, you miss you,
Des.
bro. Yeah,
Des, come on the show. Come on the show, Des.
yeah. But anyway, this my friend Desmond from college designed the
Mm-hmm.
book cover. Did a really good job. So basically, here's some poems. I'm going to give like a love poem, and I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
give a social conscious poem. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good. But before you go into it, could you just describe what mainly inspired these poems over 2011 to 2018? What kind of your main inspiration for them was?
Well, my main inspirations when I was writing my poems at these times, it was like it was a combination of things. Of course, there was a social conscious aspect. You had Occupy Wall Street was going on.
Mm-hmm.
You also had like the execution of Troy Davis, who I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure if you remember, but he was in Georgia. Even though witnesses were saying he didn't commit a murder, he was still put to death on death row.
Right.
And this was in our lifetime. And my
Mm-hmm.
thing is, one innocent man put to death on death row is one innocent man too many.
Mm-hmm.
There was also, of course, coming to my own. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're no longer a boy, but you're not really a man just yet.
Transition.
Yeah, it's a transitions, and plus two, like trying to be romantic, I guess, because
Mm-hmm.
like it's kind of like this thing where it's like most of your life you're told don't talk to girls, and all of a sudden you're like
Mm-hmm.
19 and 20. It's like, well, why can't you talk to girls? And it's just like,
Yeah, yeah.
you told me not to talk to girls most of my life. What do you think was going to happen? But and plus some
Yeah.
of these poems, I wrote because I had like, oh god, I had crushes on a lot of girls, middle, high
Yeah.
school, college, but
Mm-hmm.
I never asked any of them out because
Did you ever show it to any of them?
a few I did.
Okay. How'd they react?
They were like, so okay, they were like, this is so sweet. I don't want to date you. I'm just like,
Okay. That because you know what? I appreciate that. That's nice. That's
yeah,
nice. Because some people get offended.
yeah, I'm not gonna sit here in front. I did get offended because I was like, really? You saying that my
Mm-hmm.
poem is sweet? You're saying that this is like, of course, I'm 19, 20. I'm immature. I never spoken to a girl a day in my
Right.
life.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how to
Yeah.
react. Some of it
Mm-hmm.
was like, I feel like I've gotten better. It's like, okay, if someone says they don't want to date me, that's fine. We can still be friends. We can still chop it up and
Mm-hmm.
be cool with each other, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, like 19, 20 years old, I was like, well, give me my poem back. Forget you then. It's like, forget you then. It's like, you
Yeah.
know, but it was like, but it was like definitely trying, willing to put my heart on my sleeve and everything.
Like we talked about, opening the rib cage.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Just opening it up, like, here's my heart, take it,
Mm-hmm.
don't break it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so those are inspirations of the poems and everything else. So
Okay. And also, before you get into it, could you just describe, like, the publishing process you went through for anyone who's thinking about doing this themselves?
okay, so my journey to self-publishing was a mix. Because originally, when I actually was assigned to a publishing company,
Mm-hmm.
Phoenix Publishing, which I
Okay.
was really happy. It was a small publishing
Mm-hmm.
firm, but I was just happy that I got signed to a publishing company. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I was just happy.
Yeah.
But then it was kind of like trying to do like a book launch because originally I was trying to get it published 2019. I
Mm-hmm.
had like a date, like trying to get it published around like September 2019.
Mm-hmm.
But my publisher kept pushing it back because there were some issues going on. And I'm kind of like, hey, what's going on? Because it's like, I'm, trying to get this out. we already agreed to a date of like this on September. I think it was September 25th, 2019. In
Mm-hmm.
October, my book isn't out. What's going on? And then me and the publisher, we had like a nice discussion where we were pretty much like, hey, you know what? I think it's just best that we just went our separate ways. And so I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
ship it out. Other places I wouldn't hear back from. And then I got exposed to what's known as vanity publishing, which are these publishing firms where it's like you gotta pay them to publish your book. And I'm kind of like, that doesn't make any sense because I'm like,
Well, I mean, the name fits.
vanity. I'm like, I'm kind of like that. And plus, from my perspective, it was like, you sought me out. I didn't ask you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm not trying to sound like a diva, but at the,
No, I totally understand because I had a similar experience recently. Sometimes I make music under a different name, and there was this there was this like those advertisements you might see about like like, oh, do this and get your song on a playlist. It's the best way to get your song out there. I was like, okay, let's see what happens. And I don't take my music too seriously. It's just kind of something I do for fun, but it's always nice when your music spreads a little bit. So I was like, okay, I reached out to this guy and he was like, yeah, you just gotta like give us like $1,000 like a week. And I was like, what are you talking? No, I'm the one who created this. You should be paying me.
yeah,
If anything, I'm not gonna pay $1,000 to get on a playlist that like is maybe like somewhat well known, but not like that's crazy. If these people try to scam you, people try to scam people for art all the time because they can't do it themselves.
yeah. Because that was my thing too with the whole like you sought me out, I didn't seek you out, right? And I was
Yeah.
like, if you're making all this money, you can afford to pay in advance. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And then recoup it with the sale. Because my
Mm-hmm.
theory was, um, with vanity publishing, if I pay you the $3,000, $4,000, you know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying, for you to publish my book, then what's the incentive for you to actually push it hard and
Right. Right.
so I just said basically I said F it. I know it's hard, but I'd rather go the self-publishing route where at least if if I failed on my own terms and I could live with
Mm-hmm.
that. And so when I started out, you have to hustle because you have to pay for a graphic designer because I,
Mm-hmm.
I can't draw to save my life. I'm just what I
Right.
mean. And but you have to like really build up a social media following. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been a long road, but it's funny because now I'm getting featured in blogs. I've been doing some book interviews
Nice.
recently, with the
Oh, I didn't know about the book interviews. That's awesome. With who?
so I actually had one with Literary Express.
Okay.
They're like this literary blog based out in India, which I was kind
Mm-hmm.
of like, wow, India.
India's doing some good stuff with writing, especially English writing, man. Like they're really starting to, because I told you about that one thing that I had that was kind of India based,
Yeah.
where they published one of my things. But have you ever heard of the artist Lucky Day?
Yeah, I heard of it.
Yeah, yeah, like the R&B singer.
Hmm.
Yeah, so he kind of had like a similar thing because I mean the thing I like about him is that he didn't get he didn't blow up till he was 34 years old, and when he finally blew up was like after he had all these failures and he was like, you know what, screw it, I'm just gonna make the album I want to make, and if somebody hears it, they'll hear it. If they don't, they don't. No one's probably gonna hear it anyway, and that made the album that much better because of how he just did what he wanted.
Exactly, and that's the thing. You gotta own your stuff. My
Mm-hmm.
thing is, um, and I kind of follow what Prince did. He's like, if you don't
Mm-hmm.
own your masters, then your master owns you. And
Right, right.
and that's why if like with self-publishing, it was kind of like, yo, like the money comes directly to me.
Mm-hmm.
I actually can like do marketing. I can do like a virtual show if I feel like it. I
Mm-hmm.
don't have to be like forced to do shows if I don't feel like doing a reading or a poetry slam. I could do it on my own
Right.
terms. But so it
And
was,
you have some cred. Like you told me you performed in front of like African royalty, didn't you?
yeah, I have. So like that was a story unto itself. Um,
Feel free
performing.
to tell it. Like feel free.
Oh yeah, so that was a great story unto itself because originally, I wasn't. I was going to go to this event.
Mm-hmm.
So by the context, it's to help memorialize a black cemetery, the African
Mm-hmm.
Moses Cemetery that's currently being
Okay.
desecrated, in my hometown. And I
Yeah.
was I was going to go as like a protester,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't really looking to perform poetry. But then the leader of the group, she's like, hey, Robert, would you be interested in performing a piece? And I'm just like, I'm thinking just for a random celebration. She says, no, actually,
Right.
the that's when she let me know the day of. Oh, by the way,
Hmm.
the king of Porto Novo is coming, and Porto Novo is
Oh shit!
yeah, and Porto Novo is a city in Benin, but like King Tofa the Ninth was coming, and I was like,
Wow.
wow, So I performed. I gifted him a copy of my
Benin
poetry.
is right next to Rwanda, right?
Benin, no, Rwanda is more so like Central East Africa. Benin is
Hmm.
West Africa. The country of Benin.
Oh,
It's
what
a little,
country? Burundi. I'm thinking of Burundi.
yeah, yeah. I'm talking about so Benin, the country, and Porto Novo is more so like the Western Africa,
Okay,
West Africa is more so closer to like um,
gotcha.
Togo, Ghana, Nigeria. It's more closer to
Hmm.
that part of Africa than Rwanda and Burundi. But
Hmm.
he really liked my poem. It was called
Yeah.
Across the Kalunga, aka Blood Ties. And
In addition to the two you were going to read, could you read that one as well?
sure, I'll try my best, man. But
Okay.
I'll
Oh,
try my.
that's you said that was more of a slam, right?
Yeah, it was more of a slam. Yeah, but before
Okay. Maybe record that separately, and then I can put it on like as the outro.
I definitely, man, I'll definitely see if we can do that. All right.
Yeah.
So
All right.
basically, that was that, and so it's been a hustle, but I was able to grow a social media following on Twitter. I actually
Hmm.
gotten other publishing companies want to reach out to see if they want me to
Nice.
sign with them. I'm
Hmm.
still, weighing my options. I think for like for my upcoming project, No Rain in the Desert, I'm going to self-publish
Hmm.
again, and then if
Hmm.
I keep getting hits, or if I feel like maybe I'll just if I'm sick and tired of doing the marketing and stuff, maybe I will reach out to some of these firms. But the
Right, because
fact
if you have enough success, people will listen to you more.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly the formula. You just gotta keep out there
Hmm.
grinding and everything.
Hmm.
So, all right. So thanks, man. And I'm
No
getting ready to
problem.
perform two
Hmm.
pieces. This, a love poem, and I'm also going to do a
Hmm.
socially conscious poem.
Sounds
Um,
good.
all right. So the first poem is called "Queen of the Night Sky."
I like it.
All right. So, all right, here we go. As I look back in the years of my youth, a little wild, a little uncouth, I remember a woman with teeth like pearls and lips like roses, her breath so sweet, a serious dosage, a soul smart and sweet, but not one to trifle. She insults like a high powered rifle, not one to play, but she is willing to let others have their say. Fair as
Hmm.
she sits like a judge in her chair, giving off a regal flair. One look from her can send a man to heaven or hell. She is that real, can't you tell? Her
Mm.
sense makes a man sway, alive at night, dreaming during the day, plans her next
Hmm.
move, planning her way. People want her to stop, but she cannot as she makes her way to the top on a mission. She doesn't need permission. She's very fly, for she is the queen of the night sky.
I like it, man. I love it. I love it. You know what's crazy about the title of that poem as well? Actually, tonight, my girlfriend got my Christmas gift to me late, but my mom for Christmas got me this star chart of like what the sky was like the night I was born, right? Which was it's a beautiful gift. And my girlfriend, she wasn't aware that my mom was doing that, but like on her own, she kind of got this a separate star chart, where it's the night that we met. And at like 9 p.m. and it says on the top because she's going back home for a while. It says uh what does it say? No importa dónde, um mientras sea contigo, which basically means like it doesn't matter where I am as long as I'm with you.
Yeah.
Which is it's a and that means like she means like with me physically, like physically present or just like in her heart, like together. It was beautiful. I loved it, and like she was nervous I wasn't gonna like it. I was like, why would I not like this? Like,
It's like it kind
um,
of reminds me of that old Jackson 5 song, like I want to be where you are, I want to be.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, what I mean, that's what reminds me a
yeah.
lot.
So you don't have to go into too much detail, and you obviously don't have to say who the person is. But like, what is there a little bit of a backstory to that poem?
Okay, so Queen of the Night Sky, I wrote that around junior year of undergrad. Um,
Okay, so what year would that be?
so junior year of undergrad would be the 2012, 2013
Okay.
year. And what happened was, there was this. Okay, let me put that. I was like 20 years old at the time, and there was this older woman. She was like 5 years older than me. And
Yeah.
I thought she was like the finest woman in the world, right?
Dude, there's something about older women, man, or at least women with old souls, at least.
Yeah, and I'm just like with her, it was like I found her easy to talk to because I felt that she wasn't like judging, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
Um, and I just loved talking with her. It was like I could feel open, and
Hmm.
I figured to myself, I wanted to write, a poem, and I was going to give it to her too, but then I had found out that she was married, so I'm like, well, that sucks. I was like,
Oh
I,
man.
I was like, well, that sucks. But
Yeah. Oh man, that really sucks. Oh man. Like, yeah, man. Something about older women. Lo siento, mi amor. Uh, tu ama es vieja. No, no te preocupes.
man, John,
She's a little younger than me, but like she's more mature than a lot of 30-year-olds I know.
nice man. But I was just like, I was hurt, but I was like, I kept it. So when I started getting my organizing my collection together because I wanted to show like the wide range of topics and the thoughts, I
Hmm.
said I want to keep it. I want to keep it. So
Yeah.
I kept it, and apparently some people that have read it, they're like, "Oh my God, who is this? Who is this for?" And
Right. Right. Yeah.
now for those who are watching or listening in, now I was a young man. I had a crush on an older woman. I found out she
Yeah.
was married, but I kept the poem anyway because I thought it was nice. So
Always keep it. Always keep it.
yeah.
Because it's a piece of your own history. You know. I mean, I feel like we need to forget. I feel like sometimes people mistake, us holding on to memories as like, wishing that things were different. But no, it's not always that. It's just our memories make up who we are.
Mm-hmm. Dude, that is definitely facts. Like the thing is that all those memories that we have are
Hmm.
just they make up part of us. You know
Hmm.
who we are, what we're doing, how we think.
Hmm.
Though they play a very pivotal role. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
We wouldn't want what we want now if we hadn't experienced what we experienced then.
exactly, exactly. So, like I said, a lot of the love poems. I mean, I can still remember, reading them. I still remember
Hmm.
how I felt in that moment. When I was
Hmm.
like young and everything, and how
Yeah.
looking back at it now, 8 years later,
Hmm.
just like wow, you.
Yeah.
It was like it was more like lust, but back then it was love. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
like back then felt like love. It's like, nah, Rob, you were lusting. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
maybe it was a good thing that didn't happen because who knows how you would have acted in a relationship. So
Hmm.
so it's definitely very introspective to say the least.
Yeah. And honestly, I can hear a little bit of like, the young college student putting the older woman on a pedestal, and that can be dangerous. Anytime you
Mm-hmm.
put somebody on a pedestal, it's dangerous.
Yep, exactly. And that's the thing that I'm learning as well is if you really love someone, you wouldn't put them on the pedestal like that because it's like you got to understand that they have faults,
Right.
they make mistakes, you know. So it's like
Demonization is Yeah, demonization is not the only form of dehumanization. Deification is also a form of dehumanization.
I like that. I like that.
Hmm.
Gotta remember that.
There's a more condensed version of that I could probably figure out. That's a little clunky, but whatever.
Yeah,
That's a writer being picky.
definitely. So my next poem is
Hmm.
it's a more so a socially conscious
Right.
poem. Um, it's um, it's called JAN. Um,
Hmm.
so I'm just gonna say, pardon my language.
I had a feeling. Yeah.
So pardon the language that you hear. So here
Hmm.
we go. JAN.
We're
I can go
talking
to
we're talking more slurs, right?
yeah,
Okay. Just to
yeah,
get
yeah.
people prepared.
Sir. So yeah.
Yeah.
So here we go. I can go to school, get all the degrees in the world, not have any problems, be real chill. But to
Hmm.
you, I'm just another nigga.
Mm,
A nigga, go figure. You think I have a finger on the trigger because of what you hear. The
mm,
blackness of my ancestors you fear. I
mm,
can raise my family in the suburbs, send them to the best schools, but to you, I'm just another nigga. You think if I
mm,
come to your neighborhood, I want to drive down your values so you flee into your lily white world, yet you want me to
mm,
fight and die for you. But when I'm killed by an act of brutality, you're silent. I don't want your
mm,
daughter or your wife, your life, or your food. I just
mm,
want what's mine since birth, my humanity. The fear of
mm,
blackness scares you that you call the cops, even when I'm doing nothing. But why
mm.
should I be surprised? You've basically told me I don't matter, and I have the receipts to prove it. You wonder why I fear you, or just plain don't trust you or let you in my space? Let me tell you why. To my family and my friends, I'm me, but to you, I'm just another nigga.
I love it, man. That's amazing. That's profound.
Yeah. So basically, the story behind that, I wrote that.
Yeah, please.
So I wrote this in 2015,
Mm-hmm.
around the aftermath of Freddie Gray. Around the time Freddie Gray was killed,
Yeah.
and because it was like there's so many things going through my mind, because especially like being out there in the streets, Eric
Mm-hmm.
Garner, Tamir Rice,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, like about around in March, you had Kendrick Lamar. That year too, you had Lupe Fiasco drop Tetsuo in Youth, and
And
Kendrick
then All Right came out.
and Kendrick Lamar to Pimp a Butterfly, and
Yeah, that whole album really was, a testament to all that.
yeah, and so when I wrote this, I was like thinking of like some of my own experiences, and even now too, it's like I was saying this to someone, 5 years after writing this, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, when I'm out there, they don't know that I'm a published author. They don't know that I work a pretty good job. They don't know I got all
Mm-hmm.
these degrees and certifications, or
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of work with kids. They
Mm-hmm.
see a black man and they think that I'm automatically up to no good. They think
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm trying to get with their daughter, and I'm like, no, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
trying to holler at your daughter. Your daughter ain't even all that cute. It's like, um, I don't want your wife. I don't want what you have. I just want what's mine. I want my
Mm-hmm.
humanity recognized. I want to be able to walk down the street and not have people and not and go to and from,
Right.
walk up and down the street, walk to the convenience store without my parents having to worry about me or having to do a check-in saying, hey, I'm at the store, I'm picking up milk right now, I'm on my way back. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? It's like
Yeah.
basically,
Well, and then they're picking up notes. They're like, "What? You going after my wife?" Like,
I'm just like, it's like, or she was eyeballing me a different way. I was like, I just looked up from my phone to see if it was like, I was like, yo, I just looked up from my phone for like 2 seconds. All
yeah.
right. See if it was safe to cross the street.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you broke that down a little bit, because that has been the fear all along,
Mm-hmm.
in white society. Um, whether people are aware of it today or not is that, but it's entered our national subconscious, this white fear of black retaliation, when
Mm-hmm.
really all black people want is, like you said, their humanity. And we think that they want revenge. You guys just want, like, you know um
Equality.
I, yeah, exactly. I was trying to come up with another R word for alliteration.
Yeah. It's like this thing. It's like, Kimberly Davis did this video which came out the aftermath of George Floyd called "We Can't Win." She ended with exactly that sentiment that they are lucky that all black people want is equality and not revenge.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah, wait, was that the woman who, like, they recorded her when she was in the street, and, like, she was saying why people were rioting?
She actually broke it down. She was like, she
And she
broke.
did. She was like real animated when she did it too. Like, she really got into it.
Yeah, because she actually started out like with the breakdown. Like, you got three
Hmm.
types of people. You got the protesters, you got the anarchists, and you got the looters. Like the protesters are the
Hmm.
ones that genuinely care. Anarchists, they're
Hmm.
looking to fuck shit up regardless.
Right.
You got the looters, but it's like, but why are they looting though? And she broke down like using the Monopoly example, right? Where she talked
Hmm.
about how, let's say, the way the Monopoly is played is that you're the one making all the money. I can't make any money for myself. Whatever money I do make, I gotta give it to you. But then, and then let's say like if like the rules change, like if you don't like how I play the game, like if I'm catching up to you, you burn all my pieces, right? And then it's like,
Rosewood.
yeah, or then she also broke down, it's like, or if I'm somehow able to get like a job in your space, play a psychological mind trick, try to make me feel like as if I'm not qualified to be there, as if I'm nothing more just an equal opportunity hire. So it's kind of like, we can't win. It's like, how can we win when when everything is set up against you, that even if you, and she broke down like, using Tulsa and Rosewood, when we were able to become self-sufficient and
that's right, Tulsa. I'm sorry, but could you go into that a little bit, because I feel like a lot of people are completely oblivious to that.
Okay, great, awesome. So Tulsa was the first time American planes were used to destroy a city. And why was that? It destroyed the area known as Greenwood, Archer, and Pine, and that was like where the Tulsa's wealthy black community was. Like they had moved.
They call it Black Wall Street, right?
Yeah, Black Wall Street, because there was like four. I mean, at least to my knowledge, he had like 3 movie theaters, over 20 restaurants, nightclubs. Black folks also owned land, drove like at the time, like what was the top car, was like the Model T, was like considered like the top car at the time. And what wound up happening, which same thing happened in Rosewood, was that a white woman accused a black person of rape, even though it was kind of known that she was having an affair with a married man. But instead of getting,
how many times has that happened?
Too many times to count, my guy. Too many times to count.
That happened to Rosewood. That happened. That's what got Emmett Till killed. Like,
yeah.
Not quite, but like same principle,
Yeah, the same principle. And the other thing about Emmett Till was that many years later, it came out that she had actually lied, because she actually that in an interview that
very recently.
This is like what, 2017, that he never whistled at her. He didn't even stay there. He came in, bought candy, and just walked out the store. But she didn't like the way he was walking, I guess, because he was from the city. He was from Chicago. He was free. You know what I mean? I'm not saying like free, because of course there was like northern racism, but at least Emmett Till could, in theory, like I said, like on theory, go walk around white neighborhoods without fear of being lynched. In theory.
Yeah. I mean, because it was. I mean, like up north they kind of had de facto segregation, and down south they kind of had de jure segregation.
Yeah. So going back to that, but the real reason why a lot of people took up arms against Tulsa and Rosewood, because these were wealthy black communities. Despite all the BS that was thrown against them, they were still able to come up and be wealthy, dress nice, and all that. And so they were like, so what they did was that when they burned down like Black Wall Street, they started moving in, and the businesses that a lot of these black people had founded, they took over, because of that. So
and they called it gentrification.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing the one thing I remember, I think it was like 2 years ago, where the show Watchmen, they actually talked about Tulsa. I think it was like the very first episode. And while I'm happy they did it, I was also like, I'm more sad that people are learning more about Black history from a TV show and YouTube than they are in school, But that kind of goes like the other half that's never been told, And that's the thing with with Black Wall Street. In fact, even Wilmington, North Carolina, in fact, a lot of people don't know, that was the first time a coup took place in the United States, in Wilmington, North Carolina, because before 1898, you had like black and white, you had like black politicians that served on the city council, along with a party called the Fusion Party, which were like these progressive white Southerners.
The Fusion Party. I don't. They probably didn't stand for good things, but I like that name.
Yeah, so they actually a lot of like your more so progressive white people who were were in office. They believed in integrated schools, integrated neighborhoods, as well as the redistribution aspect. What wound up happening is, of course, like a lot of your white racists, of course, started like rabble rousing, saying, why can't we get these jobs, and why can't we do this? And of course, they did the thing that blamed the black folk. So what they wound up doing is that they had a coup where they overturned an election, and they passed like the laws, I guess you can say like a quasi-military state, that barred black people from holding office, not only in the city of Wilmington, But even you couldn't even represent Wilmington.
Wilmington, North Carolina.
Yeah, in North Carolina. As I said, Wilmington,
Okay.
North Carolina. Yes. I should be clear because I know there's
other. I got some people in Wilmington, Delaware.
That's what I was about to say. Well, I should be Wilmington, North Carolina, not Delaware. So I should be clear. Thanks for that. Thanks, John. But
yeah, no
in Wilmington, North Carolina, okay, they made it so not only could you not serve on the council, but you couldn't even represent Wilmington, North Carolina in the state legislature. So overnight, a lot of Black politicians who were like public education and at a time you think it's radical now, but you could kind of say like kind of like the first universal health care where healthcare was actually subsidized by the state. You know, we think it's radical back then. That was kind of like semi-normal practice.
Yeah.
You know, that got reversed. And a lot of, if you were a member of
why the hell would you, that's like completely screwing yourselves by doing that.
Yeah, and on top of that, if you were a member of the Fusion Party, you got kicked out of office and you were in some cases forced to flee Wilmington as well.
You know what's funny? Now that I'm sorry, this just popped in my head about the healthcare thing, but like that's cutting off your nose to spite your face, just like the Republican reaction to Obamacare. Like, you know, they're screwing themselves by doing it because a Black guy came up with it, and you know, like there's a lot of benefits from it, and they're just like, I don't want that. Like,
exactly. In fact, I think someone said it best. Grant, though, he was more so like after, like a little bit after Reconstruction when it was called. He said he gave like this quote which Ta-Nehisi used for his third book called "We Were 8 Years in Power," and he said like we actually brought the country a lot closer to democracy, and they kicked us out. You know, and that's exactly what happened in the city of Wilmington, North Carolina. You know, where even to the day, like the people who threw the coup, they got statues named after them. They got college dorms and college buildings named after them, especially at UNC Wilmington. And it's just like, you know, that's exactly like this. The whole thing, like white supremacists, they get statues, Confederates get statues, whereas those who actually tried to fight for equality and democracy, they barely get mentioned. They don't even get mentioned in the history book.
Yeah. Can I just rant on the Confederate flag for a second? Because I feel like there's one thing that people just, I don't know why this gets overlooked so often, but it does. Even if you don't believe the racial connotations of that flag, let's say that it had no racial connotations whatsoever, just for argument's sake, but it did. Look it up. Alexander Stevens' speech. It's you will see. That was the vice president of the Confederacy. But anyway, I don't know who I'm talking to over here that I keep pointing at. But anyway, Confederate flag, even if you put aside the racial issues, we're talking about a flag that represents a failed state that decided we're so upset with how America is right now and we hate it so much that we don't want to be a part of it anymore. And not only do we want to be a part of it anymore, but we want to kill the people who are a part of it. It is the most treasonous symbol in American history. It's not an American flag. It's the flag of a state, of America's worst ultimate rival throughout its history. It's the flag of America's like shadowboxing partner that tried to kill it and take it over and create what they wanted. It was sedition, and we saw an act of sedition in the Capitol the other day. And people are walking into the Capitol with Confederate flags. I'm just like, oh my God, the symbolism here that people probably don't even realize. And not only that, so the Confederate flag is a symbol of treason, even if you put aside the racial connotations of it.
Exactly.
Not only that, but the Trump, just right before you say this, the Trump flag now, after January 6th, I think should fall into a similar category. Because because people, I think a lot of people who think they love America because of their devotion to Donald Trump really don't realize that they are in love with Trumpland, a country called Trumpland, where the Trumps rule and the Trump dynasty. That's the country they're loyal to. They are more loyal to the Trump flag than they are to the American flag.
And it's funny. I'm glad you brought that up because even Jefferson Davis and Robert E. Lee, after the Civil War, they even said we're part of the United States now. Don't fly that flag. And don't wear your Confederate uniforms. Right. That was their way of saying we lost. Get over it. You know what I mean? And the thing is that flag. I'll never forget. A while ago, I said that flag represents white people who are willing to fight and die and kill white people for the right to continue to enslave black people. You know, like put it this way: in other countries, like in Germany, right, the swastika is banned. So you know what neo-Nazis do? They wear the Confederate flag patch.
Right.
So I'm like, let that sink in. Neo-Nazis and far right groups in Germany and in Greece, they wear the Confederate flag as a patch. And I'm like, if that's not a sign of like the animosity and the treason that flag represents, I don't know what does. And last time I checked, treason is punishable by death.
It is. I mean, Trump inciting these things, although it would be difficult to prove that he was responsible for the treason, he's definitely, if he doesn't get charged with a crime here, because I used to be someone who thought that pardoning Nixon was the right move, but not anymore. That was a terrible idea. Because now we see what happens when we don't hold our leaders accountable and make them, infallible. And not only that, the other thing that baffled me was that all these thin blue line flags, which honestly, I'm upset that the thin blue line flag has adopted the meaning that it has now, or at least the connotation it has now. Because I feel like initially the whole concept of the thin blue line was just like, we're cops, we gotta stick together, make sure, we protect each other, and because we perform a very difficult and dangerous service, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But it got to a point where it became this fraternity, like almost like a cult, and now and then when there was the Black Lives Matter movement, the police pushed back against it out of
Blue Lives Matter.
Blue Lives Matter. Which the thing about these Lives Matter phrases is that none of them inherently unto themselves have anything wrong with them, but because of how they've been used and how they've been hijacked and what they've been adapted, it's just a shame. And the thin blue line flag, I don't think its meaning was ever more perverted than it was on January 6th this week, because we saw people carrying that flag assaulting police officers. Yeah. It's lost its entire meaning. It is now a hate symbol, just like Pepe became a hate symbol, even though it was just some guy making a comic because he wanted to be funny.
Yeah, it's funny though too, because I want to talk about a couple of things too, about how the fact that like with Blue Lives Matter and All Lives Matter, the only reason why they came up was because people were starting to say Black Lives Matter. It was used as a counter to Black Lives Matter to try and negate the meaning behind Black Lives Matter. The thing is that we weren't saying only Black Lives Matter. We were saying we matter too. And we're well aware that all lives matter, but all lives won't matter until Black Lives Matter. And the thing about symbols, symbols can have a meaning. Like you talked about Pepe the Frog and the thin blue line. Like let's take, like some symbols can start great, but then because of negative consequences, the negative connotation, like a prime example is the swastika. Like
I was just gonna say that. Yeah,
the swastika was it was a religious symbol that was used in Africa and in Asia. It represented the sun, it represented God, it represented the path of righteousness. That was what it represented until 1933. A certain man by the name of Adolf Hitler became chancellor of Germany and took that symbol and used it as a symbol of the Nazis, and used that to help justify the Holocaust, which 6 million Jews, homosexuals, gypsies, Jehovah's Witnesses were put in concentration camps and executed. And
is gypsy a slur?
Oh yeah. Sorry, my bad. Like Romani.
No, that's all right, man. No one knows that. No one knows that. I think that we should just kind of put it out there, though. Romani, yeah.
Yeah, the Romani, the Romani or the Roma. They were they were they were also executed during the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And the thing is that quite frankly, is that that now after that, it's like, and I remember back in middle school, we had a Holocaust survivor come. And she mentioned how whenever
you're right, yeah.
And I remember she said, whenever I see a swastika, I think someone's trying to kill me. And given what she's experienced with people who had that symbol, would you blame her?
No,
I would not blame her at all. It's how I feel about the Confederate flag. When I see someone fly the Confederate flag, I'm thinking to myself, hey, you want me dead. Or something.
It's like best case scenario, you're ignorant.
Yeah. It's like best case scenario, you're ignorant. Or like even the way, in some southern states, they still call the Civil War the War of Northern Aggression. But it's like, you can't call the War of Northern Aggression when you shot first. You bombed Fort Sumter. You bombed the U.S. military base.
Right.
So how can you call the War of Northern Aggression when you're the one that
Yeah.
started it. And on top of that as well, they always talk about it's Southern heritage. What heritage of losing, heritage of slavery and oppression? Are you serious?
That's what I don't get. I think it's people who honestly, I think where that comes from. Well, I think it's kind of far removed now, but I think initially I'm completely talking out of my ass with this. But I think that, it probably comes from, initially when people were kind of like, when they would find out that there was a Confederate soldier in their ancestry, their first feeling was shame, so they needed to replace it with pride.
Mm-hmm.
And find a way to make it noble because they felt that somehow that was a reflection on them because they carried their blood in their veins, which we carry everyone's blood in our veins. The Baha'i faith has a saying that nothing that God creates is made evil. Everything that God makes is good. It's just how we utilize all of it. It can be used for good or bad. Like greed can be a good thing if you are greedy for knowledge, and anger can be a good thing if it is used to fight injustice, and all those kind of things. It's just like it's and I think that's such a great way of looking at things because we can use our God-given the things that we are given by God can either be gifts or they can be, weapons. And sometimes a weapon is a perfect example because sometimes weapons are useful. Even a pocket knife. Pocket knife can be a weapon that hurts people, or it can be something used to carve something up that you need to carve up, or whatever you need to do with the pocket knife. But it's been a while since I've used one. I've been out of scouts for a while. But oh yeah, but yeah, no, I think it's kind of like that. I mean, and I think that now, I think that's probably what the initial reaction was. And like I said, I'm talking out my ass. But then I think as the generations went on, it just kind of stuck, and people, even if they're not thinking of their Confederate ancestors, it's more like just that's the heritage that has been passed down. And I can empathize with that a little bit because if something has sentimental value to you, it's difficult for someone to tell you that, yeah, this is what it actually means. But truth is truth.
Yeah. And the thing is that I find it interesting. I never forget Kid Rock was talking about you can't get rid of the Confederate flag. That's my heritage. And someone told him, dude, you're from Michigan. You're from Detroit.
Yeah.
It's like
I see Confederate flags in Pennsylvania. Way too many. We're a northern state. It makes no sense.
Well, I would say you can be a northern state and have the racism because a lot of people forget that Pennsylvania, even though it was a northern state, stayed with the Union. There were a lot of Confederate sympathizers in Pennsylvania,
Right.
and that's why even in New Jersey, even in some like Italian families, who sometimes will have like the Confederate flag, and it's like you do realize the Confederates hated Italians too. You do know that, right?
Italians were considered black people in like the 30s. Didn't they call them black like a lot of the time?
Well, it was mainly like Sicilians. Yeah, if you were like from
Okay.
Sicily, yeah, they kind of were like, or like you were like a darker skinned Italian, they would consider you as black.
Okay.
So it's kind of like depending on where you came from, because like it's funny, because like the northern part of Italy, it's almost like blonde hair, blue eyes, almost like
Right.
German. But the more south you go, it's like the darker the
More
skin,
olive skin. Yeah.
olive skin, the blacker the hair, the darker the eyes.
Yeah.
You can thank the Moors for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the Moors ruled Italy for a while.
The
So
Moors ruled the
Spain,
Mediterranean for a
yeah,
while.
yeah, the Mediterranean, exactly.
Um, but yeah. All right, man. Well, this has been great talking to you. I think we got some great stuff. I will say I was a little worried because I realized partway in that I hadn't started recording, but I think we got some great stuff anyway. And I'll try to find a way to work some of that stuff in somehow and make sure it doesn't get lost because that was all really good too. But we have a lot of material here, and I would love if you could record. I mean, you don't have to do this obviously, but I would love if you could record just separately. The other poem you were talking about because it's more of a slam, and if it's more of a slam, it's kind of something that would be difficult to do in this format.
Yeah,
But if you were to kind of, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I'll do that, man. Like I know I have it written down, so I'll do is I'll record it and then I can send it. I can send it to you via email, or I
Mm-hmm.
can just send it to you via social media. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And do you have any readings coming up?
No, not at the moment. I'm thinking about probably trying to do one maybe for Valentine's Day weekend.
Okay.
I'm thinking about doing it probably to help like start doing some of the love. I'm probably maybe read more of the love songs, I guess I call them.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. All right, man. Well, it's been great talking to you. We'll stay in touch. And once this pandemic blows over, we got to see each other. We got to hang out.
Bro, dude, facts. I gotta come up to Pennsylvania to come see you. You're out in what, Reading, or right now?
So I'm in Downingtown, at the moment. My girlfriend, well, I won't say where she lives because I don't want to give identifying information for her. But I'm in Downingtown at the moment. My parents live in Westchester,
Okay.
and my girlfriend lives in the area as well.
Okay. All right, man, definitely.
Yeah,
Well, I gotta come out and visit you, man. It's been too long.
yeah, man, absolutely. And I want to come down there too.
Awesome sauce, bruh. All right.
All right, man. Have a
All right.
good night. Thank you so much.
No problem, man. Take care, and I don't mind coming back here again. Okay.
You know what, man? I don't mind that either. I've been thinking about what I'm going to do about repeat guests. So yeah, I'll definitely try to see if I can work that in. But yeah, all right, man.
All right, man.
Thank
Take
you
care,
so
bro.
much.
Love you, bro.
You too. Love you too. Bye.